The cold in the crypts was a different cold than the winter outside. Above, the wind could be read, heard in the eaves, felt in the seams of the walls, tasted in the wet iron tang it left on the tongue. Down here the cold was old, patient, and almost dry, the kind that settled into the bones and did not care how many fires men lit in the yards. Jon Snow took the steps one at a time, torch held high enough to keep the flame from drowning in its own smoke. Winterfell's stone drank the light greedily. On the walls, the soot of generations lay in faint smears like fingerprints, and the air carried that familiar scent of damp rock and tallow and time. Ghost moved behind him without sound, a pale shape at the edge of the torchlight. The direwolf did not like the crypts. He never had. Even when Jon had been a boy sneaking down here to stare at kings with stone swords on their knees, Ghost had waited on the stairs or prowled the mouth of the passage with hackles lifted, as if something in the dark had teeth. Jon told himself that was foolishness. The dead were dead. They did not rise in Winterfell's crypts. Not yet. Not unless the wall fell. A quieter voice answered, and he swallowed against the taste of it. The steps ended on a landing where the first statues began, the older ones, their faces worn by centuries. The Stone Kings looked like men who had never laughed. Their eyes were empty pits of shadow in the torchlight, their brows heavy, their mouths set as if they still held back words they refused to give the world. Each had an iron sword laid across his knees. The blades were pitted, rusted, and in places eaten away entirely, but they remained like the rules in a father's voice. There because they had always been there. Jon walked past them. His boots scraped grit from the steps. Somewhere deeper, water dripped with the slow certainty of a heartbeat. He had not come for comfort. He had come because sleep would not keep him, and the hall above was full of voices that wanted things from him. Judgments, promises, oaths, a certainty he could not conjure from thin air. Since Winterfell had been taken back, every day had seemed to arrive already heavy, as if dawn itself carried a burden and dropped it onto his shoulders before the sun cleared the battlements. He had come because the crypts at least asked nothing. Ghost stopped, nostrils flaring. Jon paused with him, torch lifted. There was nothing, just stone, dust, the line of statues receding like a road into darkness. Yet the direwolf's tail had stiffened, and his pale eyes fixed on a point beyond the torch's reach. Jon felt it then, too. Not a sound, not a movement. More like the way a room feels when someone is standing behind you, silent and too close. He told himself it was the weight of all those carved faces. He told himself it was his own fear, borrowed from stories told by old nurses in Winterfell's kitchens. Tales of hungry shades and kings who rose to guard their graves. He told himself it was nothing. He walked on. The passage widened where the newer statues stood, carved with sharper skill, their features less worn. His father's likeness came first, Lord Eddard Stark seated with his stone sword, hair falling to his shoulders in the way Jon remembered from childhood. The sculptor had caught the sternness, the patience, the stubborn righteousness that had been Ned Stark's armor as surely as any male. Jon stopped there, torchlight trembling against the stone face. For a moment his throat tightened so hard he could not swallow. "I tried," he whispered, and the sound seemed wrong in the crypts, too small. He could not decide what he meant. He had tried to be a son worthy of this man. He had tried to be a brother to the children who had been given the name Stark without question. He had tried to be a good commander, a good lord, a good man. He had tried to die when duty demanded it. He had tried to live when the world brought him back without asking. The statue offered no answer, only stone and the shadow of stone. Beyond Ned Stark sat Catelyn Stark in cold marble, though in life she had never been laid here. Someone, years ago, had carved her anyway, as if the crypts had needed to correct the story the world had told. A woman's face, composed, hands folded, eyes downcast. Jon felt an old ache in the sight of her. An ache of being looked through, of being weighed and found wanting without being given a chance to speak. He walked past her without stopping. Lyanna Stark's statue waited farther on, set apart slightly as if even in death she would not be pressed too close to others. The sculptor had made her young as she had been, with a wildness in her carved hair and a softness at her mouth that suggested she had smiled often, and had done it like a challenge. Her stone sword lay across her knees, but the blade seemed too heavy for her slender hands. Jon slowed. The torch cracked quietly as the resin in its wood heated. Ghost's hackles lifted, a line of raised fur along his spine like a ridge of snow. "Lyanna," Jon said, though he had never spoken her name aloud down here. It felt intimate in a way he could not explain. He remembered stories. Lyanna riding like a boy, Lyanna laughing at the wrong times, Lyanna promising things she would not live long enough to keep. He remembered whispers, too, and the way his father's mouth tightened when anyone asked too directly about her. He should have turned back then. Whatever had pulled him down here was not reason. It was compulsion, the tug of a thread he had never known was tied to him. The torchlight slid across the base of Lyanna's statue. Jon saw the scrape marks first, faint as fingernails on stone, half hidden by dust. The stone beneath the statue's left knee was not as smooth as the rest. It had been disturbed, then cleaned, then left to gather dust again. A hairline crack ran along one edge. His breath caught. He knelt, torch held close, and brushed the dust away with his gloved fingers. The crack widened into a seam. Someone had set a stone here and meant it to be found, but not quickly, not by accident, not by a curious child with too much time on his hands. The stone was heavier than it looked. Jon hooked his fingers into the seam and pulled. For a moment it did not move. Then, with a low grind like a throat clearing, it shifted. A hollow yawned behind it. Ghost growled, low and vibrating, and the sound raised the fine hairs on Jon's arms beneath his cloak. Jon leaned closer. The torchlight reached into the cavity and revealed an iron coffer, long and narrow, its surface dark with age. Its edges were decorated with simple knotwork, wolf's teeth, a dragon's tail, shapes that could have been vines or flames depending on the angle. A clasp sat at its front, not locked, only shut. Jon's fingers hovered. He felt absurdly as if he were about to steal from the dead. Then another thought came, sharper. If this was here, it was meant for someone living, for someone whose hands could open it. He drew it out. The iron was cold enough that it bit through his gloves. The coffer weighed more than it should have. Ghost's growl deepened, but he did not retreat. He leaned in, nose working, and then, unexpectedly, whined, a soft sound of unease. Jon set the coffer on the stone floor and unclasped it. The lid lifted without resistance, and the torchlight fell onto metal that did not shine like any common steel. It drank the orange glow and gave back a darker gleam, rippled as if smoke had been trapped in iron. Valyrian steel. Jon had seen it only twice in his life, once in Longclaw, once in the blade that had nearly ended him. This was not a sword. It was a crown, a circlet of black rippled metal, thin enough to look delicate and cruel, shaped into alternating points like frozen flames. Between the points, tiny hammered wolves and dragons chased one another around the band. Their bodies knotted together as if locked in an eternal struggle that had become, somehow, a dance. Small pale stones were set in the front, milky, like bits of moon caught and polished. They were not diamonds. Their light was colder, and as Jon stared he felt as though they reflected not the torch but something farther away, something that did not burn. At the bottom of the coffer lay a strip of parchment, folded twice. Jon's fingers shook as he unfolded it. The ink was brown with age, the handwriting fine and swift. For the wolf who carries the dragon. For the promise made in blood and kept in silence. When the cold comes and the living falter, let steel speak where tongues fail. There was no name, no seal, only the last line, written more heavily, as if the quill had dug into the page. Do not kneel. Jon stared at the words until they blurred, and for a moment he thought he could hear something beyond Ghost's breathing. A faint ringing, like distant metal struck once and left to hum. His mouth was dry. This is madness, he whispered, though no one had answered him. The crypts did not laugh, but the darkness felt amused. Valyrian steel in Winterfell's crypts. Crown, not a blade. and a message that sounded like a command. He thought of his father's face, stone and real both. He thought of Sansa's eyes, sharp as a needle and twice as hard now. He thought of the lords who had bent the knee to him in the Godswood and the ones who had looked at him and seen only a bastard who had gotten lucky. He thought of the dead beyond the wall, endless as night. He reached into the coffer and lifted the crown. It was cold enough to sting, but not like iron cold. It was a cold that felt clean, almost sharp, as if it could cut him without moving. The metal's ripples moved in the torchlight, though Jon knew they did not truly move at all. Ghost pressed close, head low, ears back. Jon felt the direwolf's breath on his hand. He held the crown near his face. The pale stones caught the torchlight and flared, and for a heartbeat he saw not the crypts but something else. Snow falling on black water, a woman's scream swallowed by wind, a man's hands stained red and shaking as he wrapped cloth around metal. Then it was gone, and he was kneeling on cold stone again, torch crackling, ghost trembling. Jon lowered the crown back into the coffer with care he did not understand. He shut the lid and clasped it. His palms were sweating inside his gloves, though the crypts were cold enough to numb him. He took a breath that scraped his throat raw. "Come," he said to Ghost, and his voice sounded steadier than he felt. "We're leaving." Ghost followed, but he looked back once, pale eyes fixed on Lyanna Stark's statue as if waiting for it to speak. Jon did not look back. If he looked back, he might never climb the steps again. He carried the coffer in both hands. The iron dug into his palms through the gloves, and with each step upward he felt as if he were bringing something alive into the world. At the top of the stairs, the air changed. It was warmer. Still winter, still damp, but touched by human heat and smoke and life. The sounds of Winterfell returned. A distant shout, the clatter of a hammer, the low hum of voices behind stone. Jon paused at the mouth of the crypts and looked out into the yard. Snow had fallen in the night, a fresh layer dusting the ruined corners and the rebuilt beams alike, softening sharp edges. Men moved like dark ants across white ground, hauling timber, rolling barrels, setting stones. The world kept working as if it had time. Jon held the coffer close under his cloak as he walked. When he crossed the yard, no one stopped him. No one asked where he had been. They nodded because he was Lord Commander once, because he had led them in battle, because in the North men did not pry unless they intended to use what they learned as a weapon. He went to his chambers and barred the door. The room was plain, Winterfell's rooms always were, but someone had tried to make it comfortable for him. There was a fire laid in the hearth, and a fur thrown over the bed, and a pitcher of water on the table. Little kindnesses, little weights. Jon set the coffer on the table and stared at it. He thought of the parchment's last line again. "Do not kneel." He wondered who had written it. Ned Stark. Lyanna Stark? Someone else whose name had never been spoken in Winterfell's halls? And why hide it behind Lyanna's statue, behind dust and stone, as if ashamed or afraid? A knock came at the door, sharp and impatient. "Jon," Sansa Stark called from the other side. "We need you in the hall." Jon's throat tightened. Of course, the world did not wait for the answers he did not have. He looked at the coffer once more. The iron sat quiet, harmless, like a tool put away. He knew better. He opened the chest at the foot of his bed and pushed the coffer beneath spare cloth and worn leather, burying it as if he could bury its meaning. Then he straightened, took a breath, and unbarred the door. Sansa stood there with her cloak pulled tight, hair braided and pinned like armor. Her cheeks were red from cold, her eyes bright with a light that was not warmth. Behind her Davos Seaworth waited, hat in hand, his face lined with concern and something like resignation. Tormund Giantsbane lounged nearby, grinning as if the whole world were a joke told for his amusement. "The lords are arguing," Sansa said without greeting. "Again." "They always argue," Tormund said. "It's how you know they're alive." Davos offered Jon a look that asked without words, "Are you all right?" Jon gave him nothing in answer because he did not trust himself to speak of what lay hidden in his room. He did not trust himself to speak of the way the crypts had felt, as if they had watched him. He nodded once. Then we'll end it. Sansa's gaze flicked to him, assessing. You sound certain. Jon felt the weight of the coffer beneath cloth as if it sat in his chest now. He kept his face still. I have to be. They walked together through Winterfell's corridors. The castle had been built to hold back enemies, but Jon sometimes thought its walls held back peace most of all. In every passage there was a draft, a whisper of cold, the sense that winter had found a home here and would not be turned out. As they approached the great hall, voices rose, hard, angry, overlapping. Men shouting their fear disguised as pride. Men insisting they had no more grain, no more men, no more patience. Men who had buried sons and did not want to bury the rest. Jon pushed the hall doors open, and the noise hit him like a wave. The northern lords were gathered around the long tables, some seated, some standing. Their banners were draped behind them like reminders of who they were supposed to be. House Manderly's Merman, House Umber's Chained Giant, House Karstark's Sunburst. Faces Jon knew and faces he did not, all of them weathered by cold and war. When Jon entered, the arguing did not stop at once, but it shifted, like wolves scenting a change in the pack. A man with a heavy beard slammed his fist on the table. We have bled for you, he snarled. We bent the knee because we thought you were Stark enough. But if you mean to bring more southern wars to our door, I mean to keep the dead from walking through your door. Jon cut in, his voice sharp. The hall quieted, not from respect but from surprise. Jon rarely raised his voice. When he did, men listened because it meant he was past patience. He walked to the high seat at the hall's end, not sitting yet, standing behind it. Sansa took her place beside him, Davos on the other side, Tormund leaning on a pillar as if he owned the place. We don't have time for this, Jon said. Every day you argue, the cold comes closer. If you won't give me men, give me something else, food, horses, smiths. If you won't do that, leave. But you will not stand in my hall and pretend pride will stop the dead. A murmur ran through the room. Someone laughed bitterly. Your hall, Lord Serwyn said, eyes narrowed. A bold claim for a man who won't even call himself Lord. Jon felt Sansa's gaze on him, hard as flint. She had wanted him to take the title Lord of Winterfell publicly, to stop the bleeding at its source. Jon had refused because the title felt like stolen clothing, too large and too heavy. He had worn enough stolen things in his life. The name Snow, the Black of the Watch, the mantle of leader thrust on him without asking. He had not wanted another. Now, with the coffer hidden in his room, he wondered if his refusals had been cowardice dressed as humility. A raven croaked somewhere in the rafters, startling in the quiet. Jon met Lord Serwyn's eyes. This is Winterfell, he said. It belongs to the north. It belongs to the living. That's all I care about. That's not all they care about, Sansa murmured under her breath, so only Jon heard. They care who speaks for it. Jon's jaw tightened. He looked out over the hall again. Faces stared back, some hopeful, some resentful, some simply tired. He saw children near the walls, too young to fight but old enough to understand fear, watching the men decide whether they would live or die. He saw wildlings among the gathered, their furs patched, their eyes wary in the stone hall that still smelled like southern rule to them. He saw a future narrowing, becoming a tunnel. The coffer seemed to pulse in his mind, a black heartbeat. Jon raised his hands slightly, palms open. Enough, he said. Sit. We'll speak of what matters. The dead, the wall, the plans. He could have ended it there. He could have gone on like he always did, forcing duty forward one day at a time, dragging men behind him by sheer stubbornness until either they reached safety or all fell into the dark. But as he spoke of patrols and grain stores, of where to send refugees and how to reinforce the outer walls, he felt something shifting in the room. The lords listened, but their eyes slid awa. Why, when he spoke of ordering them? They heard him as a commander, not as a king. They heard him as a man asking, not a man who could demand. And in the places where they did not hear him, fear grew. When the meeting ended, they left in clusters, still murmuring, still unconvinced. Jon watched them go and felt the hollow behind his ribs widen. Sansa touched his arm. Her fingers were cold through the leather. "You can't keep holding them together with words," she said softly. "Words fray." Jon looked at her. In the torchlight, her face looked older than it had any right to, as if winter had carved lines into her by hand. He thought of her as a girl with a direwolf pup in her arms, proud and naive. That girl was gone. The woman beside him had been made by pain. "What would you have me do?" he asked, though he already knew. Sansa's eyes held his. "Be what they need, not what you wish you were." Davos cleared his throat, giving Jon a chance to turn away. "There's more," he said. "Riders from the East Road. They've brought news." Jon's stomach tightened. "From the Wall." Davos shook his head. "Not the Wall. Not exactly. The villages near the last river. Someone's gone missing. A whole hamlet, they say. No bodies. No tracks. Just gone." A hush fell over the small group. Even Tormund's grin faded a fraction. "Gone where?" Tormund asked, voice rougher. Davos shrugged helplessly. "That's what they're saying." Sansa's mouth tightened. "Rumors." Davos's gaze was steady. "Rumors are how the world warns you before it screams." Jon felt the coffer in his room again, as if it were tugging at him. The cold in the crypts seemed suddenly close, a breath at the nape of his neck. He nodded once. "Bring the riders in. I'll hear them." As they moved toward the side door, Sansa fell into step with him. "Jon," she said low. He glanced at her. "You went into the crypts," she said. It was not a question. Jon's pulse quickened. "How do you know?" Sansa's expression did not change. "Because you do when you're cornered. You always have. And because Ghost came up with dirt on his paws." Jon opened his mouth, then closed it. There were lies he could tell and truths he could tell, and both felt dangerous. Sansa stopped in the corridor and faced him fully. "If there's something you found," she said, "something you're hiding because you think it's protecting us, remember that secrets are poison. We've had enough poison." Jon held her gaze. He wanted to tell her about the crown, about the parchment, about the way the pale stones had seemed to look back at him. He wanted to put it in her hands and ask her what it meant, because Sansa understood power in a way he never had. But he feared what her understanding would do. "Not now," Jon said at last. Sansa's jaw clenched. For a moment he saw anger flicker, quick and fierce. Then she masked it with control, the way she always did now. "Fine," she said, "but soon." Jon nodded, though he did not know if it was promise or surrender. They went to meet the riders, and when Jon listened to their frightened account, an empty village, doors swinging in the wind, stew still warm on a table, children's toys left in snow. He felt the world narrowing again into that tunnel. Duty demanded a leader, the dead demanded a king, and somewhere beneath Winterfell, a crown waited in iron darkness as if it had been waiting for him all his life. Winterfell's corridors held their own weather. Even when fires burned in the great hall, drafts slid along the floors like water, cold tongues licking at ankles. Jon walked with Sansa and Davos through stone passages that had seen too many banners. He wondered, not for the first time, if castles were built for war or if war simply found them because men liked to pile stone into shapes that pretended permanence. They reached a small chamber near the kitchens where the riders had been brought in. 3 men stood there, shoulders hunched, caps in their hands. Their cheeks were raw from windburn. Their eyes were the eyes of men who had ridden hard and had not outrun what followed in their minds. Jon studied them a moment before speaking. In the past, he would have stepped forward quickly, asked questions, offered reassurance. Now he forced himself to be still. Stillness was a kind of authority he was learning. A man who moved too much looked unsure. "Tell it again," Jon said, slowly. "All of it." The eldest rider swallowed. "We were sent from Lord Manderley's outpost on the White Knife, my lord." "Not Lord," someone muttered behind Jon. He did not turn to see who. The rider flinched at the correction, then continued. "We were sent because the hamlet at Shiver Ford stopped sending word. No ravens, no travers, We thought bandits. We thought wolves. His laugh came out thin. Wolves would leave tracks. And, Jon asked, voice even. And there were none, the rider said. He blinked hard, as if trying to clear an image. No tracks in or out. The snow was fresh, but not that fresh. It should have shown something. We found the place like the people had stepped out and never come back. Doors open, pots on the fire. A babe's cradle overturned like someone had stood too fast. But no blood, my lord. No bodies. Davos shifted. Could they have fled? Taken a boat? The rider shook his head. There'd be prints. There'd be drag marks where they pulled sledges. There was nothing. Just the cold. His voice dipped. And a smell. What smell? Sansa asked. The rider hesitated, eyes flicking to Jon. Like a storm, my lady. Like lightning, but wrong. Like the air before snow, only sharper. Jon's stomach tightened. He had smelled it beyond the wall. The first time the wights had come, that scent had been in the wind, cold and strange, like metal left too long in the snow. Any signs of fighting? Jon asked. No, the rider said quickly. No broken doors, no spilled blood, just silence. He swallowed again. And the horses wouldn't go near the place. They reared, tried to bolt. My mare near kicked me in the face. Tormund snorted from behind. Horses have sense. Shame men don't. Jon ignored him. Did you see anything else? Marks? Symbols? The rider's eyes dropped. We found a patch of frost in the middle of the hamlet. Not snow frost, like the ground had been kissed by something colder than winter. It was shaped like a circle Jon thought. A memory stirred. Patterns in the snow, spirals of bodies, twisted symbols left for watchers. The dead liked their messages. He felt Sansa's gaze on him, searching his face for the truth he was not speaking aloud. Jon nodded at the riders. You did right to come. Get warm. You'll ride again tomorrow. The youngest rider looked up sharply. Tomorrow? Jon's voice was iron. We'll send men to Shiver Ford at first light. If there's danger, we meet it. If the people are alive, we bring them back. He let the word hang. If they were dead, they would learn how and why. The riders bowed awkwardly and were led away. The moment they left, the room seemed to exhale. Sansa stepped closer, low enough that her voice would not carry. You know what this means. Jon stared at the door the riders had gone through. I know what it might mean. It means the dead are not waiting, Sansa said. They're moving. Davos rubbed at his jaw with his thumb. If the dead are south of the wall. They're not, Jon said, though certainty was more hope than knowledge. Not yet, but he shook his head. We can't afford to pretend the wall is enough. Not anymore. Tormund pushed off the wall where he had been leaning. His red beard was flecked with melted snow, eyes bright and serious now. The wall was always just ice, he said. Ice cracks, ice melts, ice breaks when a giant leans on it. His gaze cut to Jon. We should have listened when you said the dead were real, but men like their lies. Jon turned away from the chamber, already moving. We need a council, he said. Now, not tomorrow. Sansa caught his sleeve. Jon. He stopped. He looked at her hand on his arm, thin fingers, but strong. He remembered those same fingers on a cage's bars once, in a place where Sansa had smiled because smiling kept her alive. What? He asked, more harshly than he meant. Sansa did not flinch. This is bigger than patrols, she said. This is why they argue. They smell fear and they want someone to name it. You can't keep being the man who tells them it will be all right. You have to be the man who makes them believe it. Jon's mouth tightened. And how do I do that? Sansa's eyes held his. By taking what they understand. Power, she meant. A title. A symbol. A story they could cling to when the dark came. Davos cleared his throat, uncomfortable. There's no shame in wearing a name if it helps you save people, he said quietly. Stannis wore names like armor. It didn't save him, but sometimes armor helps. even if it's heavy. Jon felt the iron coffer under cloth in his mind as if it were beneath his ribs, heavy and cold. He had told himself he would not kneel. He had not considered that standing might require a crown. He left them then, not answering because answering would make it real. He walked through Winterfell like a man moving through a dream. Men bowed their heads as he passed, some respectful, some simply cautious. A few called "Hi, and my lord" out of habit. A few called him Jon, because they had bled beside him and names were all that separated brothers from lords. Jon nodded, spoke where he had to, but his thoughts stayed in the crypts where the torchlight had caught rippled steel. In his chambers he barred the door again, like a frightened child. He pulled the coffer from its hiding place and set it on the table. The crown waited inside, quiet, but Jon felt as if it listened. He opened the clasp and lifted the lid. The cold seemed to roll out like fog. The pale stones stared up at him, reflecting firelight with a strange stillness. Jon stared back. He thought of the night's watch, of vows spoken beneath a weirwood's red eyes. He thought of the weight of Longclaw in his hand, of the way men had followed him when he did not want them to. He thought of the moment he had died. How simple it had been, a knife, a betrayal, and then darkness. He thought of coming back, of waking to his own breath, and the horror of life returned. Was this what the world wanted from him now? Not just life, but rule? He picked up the parchment again, reading the inked words until they were etched into him. For the wolf who carries the dragon. Jon's chest tightened. He had never believed the whispers, not fully. His mother had been a blur in his mind, a shadow his father had refused to name. Yet there had always been questions, like a pebble in a boot you could never quite shake out. Why had Ned Stark, so rigid in honor, carried the stain of a bastard? Why had he refused to speak of it? Why had he looked at Jon sometimes with something that was not only love, but sorrow? Jon's fingers clenched around the parchment until it crinkled. He looked at the crown. The metal rippled like smoke trapped in ice. Wolves and dragons chased each other around the band. It was a thing made by hands that understood symbolism and cruelty. A crown could be a promise. A crown could be a threat. A crown could be a trap. He lifted it again, and the cold bit deeper this time, as if recognizing him. He held it at eye level and watched the torchlight play along its ridges. In the pale stones, for a heartbeat, he saw a different fire, green, fierce, reflected in a woman's eyes. Then he blinked and it was gone. He set the crown down gently, as if it might shatter. Outside, a horn sounded once, long and low. It was not the wall's horn, but Winterfell's, calling men to gather. Another message, another demand. Jon exhaled slowly. He could refuse. He could keep being Jon Snow, the man who had never fit in any skin offered to him. He could keep forcing men forward with the strength of his will and the sharpness of his sword. But will was not always enough. The dead did not tire. The dead did not break. The dead did not argue about titles because titles were all they had left to lose. Jon's gaze drifted to the hearth. The fire burned steady, orange and alive. He imagined that flame in 100 houses, in 1,000 villages, snuffed out under a cold that did not care what men called themselves. He reached for the crown again. This time he did not flinch at its bite. He brought it up and, after a pause that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, set it on his head. The metal settled against his hair with a weight that was not heavy, and yet it pressed down like a hand. The cold spread across his scalp, sinking into him, and for a moment his vision sharpened painfully. He heard every crackle of the fire, every distant footstep, every whisper of wind through stone. He smelled smoke and snow and iron and something else, something like the far sea, black and cold. Ghost whined softly from the corner, staring at him. Jon looked at himself in the small polished shield hung on the wall, used as a mirror when no better glass could be found. The crown made his dark hair darker. It framed his face in a way that felt wrong, and yet not entirely. Like a cloak he had always refused to put on because he feared it would fit too well. He lifted the crown off again, breath ragged. His hands shook now, though he did not know if it was fear or something deeper. He set it back in the coffer and closed the lid. Not yet, he told himself. Not until he understood. Not until he had to. But the words felt like another lie. There was a knock at the door again, urgent. "Jon Snow!" A voice called, one of the guards. "The lords are gathering. Lady Sansa Stark says you're needed." Jon's throat tightened. Needed. Always needed. He looked at the coffer. He looked at the door. Then he opened the coffer once more, lifted the crown, and held it for a long moment. He felt its cold, its certainty, its silent demand. He made his choice without speaking it aloud. When he left his chamber, the crown was hidden beneath his cloak, wrapped in dark cloth. It sat against his chest like a second heart. He walked through Winterfell toward the great hall, and with each step the air seemed to change, as if the castle sensed what he carried. Men turned their heads as he passed. Ghost followed at his heel, white as a winter omen. Jon Snow did not know if he was walking toward salvation or ruin. He only knew he was walking. The great hall smelled of wet wool and smoke and men who had not slept enough. Torches burned along the walls, their flames bending in drafts that slipped in from cracks no mason had ever truly sealed. Outside, snow piled against the doors and made the world quieter, but inside Winterfell's heart beat loud with voices. They had gathered faster than Jon expected. News moved through a castle like blood through a body. Even before a command was spoken, the servants knew, the guards knew, the stable boys knew. By the time Jon stepped into the hall, men were already in place as if they had been waiting for the moment. The northern lords filled the benches and stood in knots between the tables, cloaks flung back to show sigils stitched in fading thread. Some had come armed, swords at their hips, because in the north a meeting of power was never quite separate from the threat of violence. Wildlings stood among them, big men and women with hair like tangled rope, their furs patched and their faces suspicious in the stone cage of a hall. They did not bow. They did not scrape. They watched as if measuring whether these kneelers were worth dying beside. Jon walked to the front without hurry. He kept his face still, his shoulders squared. He could feel eyes on him, weighing. Some had loved him for what he had done. Some had hated him for what he was. Most simply wanted to know if the man before them would keep their children from freezing. Sansa Stark stood near the high seat, chin lifted. She wore gray wool trimmed with black fur, a wolf clasp at her throat. Her expression was carved control. Jon could not tell if she knew what he carried beneath his cloak. If she did, she gave no sign. She watched him like someone watching a knife's edge. Davos Seaworth stood on Jon's other side, hands clasped behind his back. The Onion Knight looked out over the hall with wary eyes, a man who had seen how quickly a crowd could turn. Tormund Giantsbane lounged near the front, arms crossed, as if he were waiting for a show. Jon stopped before the high seat but did not sit. He remained standing, forcing the room to focus on him rather than the chair, because the chair was a symbol and symbols were dangerous. The murmuring did not die entirely, but it thinned. A man, Lord Ryswell, Jon thought, or perhaps a cousin, called out, "We're not here to hear the same talk again. We know the dead are coming. We want to know what you're doing about it." Another voice, sharper, "And we want to know why we should follow you at all if you won't even claim the name that should be yours." A rumble ran through the room. Several men muttered agreement. Jon felt heat rise in his face, not from shame but from anger at the timing. As if the dead cared about bloodlines. He raised a hand. Silence came, reluctant, like a dog called away from meat. Jon's voice carried farther than he expected. "You're right," he said. "You've heard me speak of the dead. You've heard me tell you to prepare. And you've heard me ask for men, for grain, for unity." He paused. He let the pause stretch. Men shifted, impatient. Good. Impatience could be used. "I've been asking," Jon continued, "because I've been hoping that duty would be enough. That fear would be enough. That love for this land would be enough." He looked at the faces before him, faces carved by cold, faces that did not soften easily. But hope is not a plan, he said. And asking is not leading. Not in the storm that's coming. Sansa's gaze sharpened. Davos's eyes flicked to Jon's cloak, as if he sensed movement beneath. Jon reached under the cloth and drew the wrapped bundle into view. A whisper ran through the hall like a gust. He did not unwrap it yet. He held it, hand steady, and let men stare at the shape. "Some of you still see me as a bastard," Jon said. "Some of you see me as a commander. Some see me as a Stark. Some see me as a crow. Some see me as a wolf raised among kneelers. Some see me as a man who should bend the knee to someone else's throne." At that, a few men spat. Jon's voice did not rise. It did not need to. "I don't have the luxury of being whatever each of you prefers. The dead won't negotiate with your pride." He untied the cloth. Black rippled steel caught the torchlight and gave back a dark gleam. Pale stones flared like frozen moonlight. The crown's points rose like ice teeth. For a heartbeat, the hall seemed to stop breathing. Someone swore softly. A wildling woman hissed under her breath like a startled cat. A lord leaned forward as if pulled by a hook. "Valyrian steel," Davos breathed, almost to himself. He looked at Jon, shock plain on his weathered face. Sansa did not move, but the muscles in her jaw tightened. Jon held the crown up higher so all could see. The torchlight made the wolves and dragons along its band seem to twist. "This was hidden beneath Winterfell," Jon said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, as if it belonged to someone else. "In the crypts, behind Lyanna Stark's statue." The name struck the room like a thrown stone. Men glanced at each other, unease stirring. Lyanna Stark's name was a wound and a legend both. "A crown," Lord Cerwyn said incredulously. "What is this?" Jon turned the crown slowly so the pale stones caught every angle of light. "It's a decision," he said. "For too long the North has been pulled by everyone else's wars. Southern kings, Ironborn raids, Lannister cruelty, Bolton treachery. We've been asked to bleed and told its honor." A murmur of anger rose at the names spoken. Old wounds reopened. Jon's eyes swept them. "I'm done asking the North to kneel to anyone who doesn't understand winter. I'm done letting our lives be bargaining chips for crowns forged in warmer places. The dead are coming, and if we fall, the whole world falls with us." He felt the hall leaning in, listening now. Not because they agreed, because the words had teeth. Jon lowered the crown until it hovered just above the table before him. He looked at it a moment longer, letting the cold radiate into his palms. He remembered his own doubt, his reluctance, his fear of becoming what power made of men. Then he looked up. "I will not kneel," Jon said, and his voice rang against stone. "Not to the Iron Throne, not to any Southern Queen, not to any lord who thinks his pride matters more than the living." The hall erupted into shouts, some angry, some shocked, some approving. Jon raised his voice, not shouting, but hard enough to cut through. "I have led you in battle," he said. "I have bled with you. I have died with you." His throat tightened on the last, but he did not flinch. "I don't ask you to follow me because of my birth. I ask you because I will do what needs doing, even when it costs me everything." He paused, then spoke the words that changed the air. "I take this crown," Jon said, "and I declare myself king." For a heartbeat, there was only the crackle of torches. Then the hall exploded. "King in the North," someone bellowed, and the words were picked up like fire in dry grass. "King in the North," others shouted over it. "He has no right. A bastard king? Valyrian steel doesn't make him Stark. We swore to the Starks. He is a Stark. He is a crow. He's the only one who fought for us." Tormund's laughter boomed above it all. "A king with wolf blood," he roared, pounding his fist on a table. "Better than a kneeler with a lion's arse." Jon stood still, letting the storm wash over him. This was the moment where men either broke or bent or rose. Lord Manderly, fat, red-faced, with eyes like chips of ice, pushed forward from his bench, hands raised for silence. It took effort, but the hall quieted as men remembered the power of House Manderly's ships and coin. "A crown is a dangerous thing," Lord Manderly said, voice loud and careful. "But so is a leader who will not claim his place. We have been leaderless too long. We have been prey too long." His gaze locked on Jon. "Will you swear, Jon Snow, to defend the North above your own pride? Will you swear to put the living first?" Jon's jaw tightened. "I swear it," he said. "On my life." Lord Manderly stepped closer. He did not bow, not yet. "Then put it on," he said. The hall held its breath again. Jon looked at the crown in his hands. It was not a sword. He could not swing it at the dead and solve the problem. It was a story, a claim, a weight. He thought of the crypts of Lyanna's stone face. He thought of the parchment's last line, "Do not kneel." Jon lifted the crown and set it on his head. The cold touched his skin and spread like ink in water. He felt the hall fall into a strange hush, as if even the torches held their breath. The pale stones gleamed. The black steel sat against his hair like a band of night. For a moment Jon heard nothing but his own heartbeat. Then Lord Manderly dropped to one knee, slow and deliberate. "My king," he said, and the words were not loud, but they carried. A ripple moved through the hall. Men looked at one another, calculating, fearful of being the last to bend or the first to break. House Serwyn's lord knelt, jaw clenched. "My king," he said, as if the words tasted bitter. Others followed, one by one. The sound of knees on stone echoed. The wildlings did not kneel, but they raised fists, stamping feet, shouting approval in their rough tongue. Sansa watched it all with a face like winter glass. Jon could not read her. He feared he could, and he feared what he might see. Davos Seaworth bowed his head, not kneeling. Perhaps because he had knelt too often, perhaps because he did not know what this meant yet. But he said softly, "Your Grace," and the respect in his voice was real. The last holdouts stood stiff, eyes narrowed, but the moment had turned. Resistance now was a choice to stand alone against the tide. Jon's throat burned. He wanted to tell them he did not want this. He wanted to confess how terrified he was that he would become the kind of man his father had warned him about, the kind who believed his own story and crushed others beneath it. But kings did not confess. Not here. Not now. He raised his hands. "Listen," Jon said, and the hall quieted more quickly than before. That was the first sign of what the crown had done. Not magic, perception. Men wanted to hear the man they had just named. "We don't have time to celebrate," Jon said. "This crown doesn't mean feasts and songs. It means work. It means you do what you're told even when you hate it, because hate won't keep your children warm." He felt the crown's cold pressing into him, like a reminder. "I'm sending men to Shiver Ford at first light," Jon said. "I'm ordering grain counted and moved. I'm ordering every house to send smiths to Winterfell. Every able man will train. Every woman who wants to fight will train too. Every child will be moved to the inner keep when the storm comes." Murmurs rose, but less defiant now. More practical. Men asking how, not why. Jon looked out over them. "If any lord refuses," he said. "If any lord hoards while others starve, if any lord thinks he can wait and let his neighbor die first, then he is not my subject. He is my enemy." The hall went very quiet at that. Somewhere near the back, a raven croaked again, an ugly sound in a sacred moment. Sansa stepped forward at last, her voice clear. "You heard your king," she said. "Winterfell will enforce it." Jon felt her words like a hand on his shoulder. Support, yes, but also a reminder. She would not let him forget the cost. The meeting broke into motion then. Men surging toward each other, shouting orders, arguing over details now rather than titles. Jon remained standing as if rooted, crown cold on his head, watching the north turn into an army. A lord approached hesitantly, one of the smaller houses, a man Jon barely knew. He bowed shallowly, eyes darting to the crown. "Your Grace," he said, May I ask, where did you say?" "You found it," Jon's mouth tightened. In the crypts, he repeated. Hidden. The man's gaze flicked down, then back up. Hidden by who? Jon held his stare. By someone who wanted the North to have it when it needed it. The man nodded, but Jon saw the hunger in his eyes. Curiosity, greed, fear, all of it mixed. When the Lord left, Jon looked at Davos, and Davos looked back with worry that was almost pity. This will reach the south, Davos said quietly. Jon's jaw clenched. Let it, he said, but even as he spoke, he felt the truth of it settle. He had not just united the North. He had lit a beacon, the kind that drew ships and monsters. When the hall finally emptied enough to breathe, Jon felt as if he had run a battle without lifting a sword. The crown's cold had seeped into him until his scalp ached. He wanted to reach up and tear it off, throw it into the nearest fire, laugh at the absurdity of it. He did none of those things. Kings did not do what they wanted. That was the cruelest truth. Sansa led him to a small solar tucked off the hall, a room with narrow windows and a heavy table scarred by old knives. A fire burned low in the hearth, not enough to warm the room completely, but enough to make the shadows move. Davos shut the door behind them, his steps careful, as if he feared the room might be listening. Sansa did not waste time. She turned on Jon, blue eyes hard. You should have told me, she said. Jon's throat tightened. I didn't know what it was when I found it. You knew it was a crown, Sansa snapped. You knew what you meant to do. Jon rubbed his palms on his thighs, feeling the faint numbness the crown's cold had left in his fingers earlier. I didn't mean, he stopped. Lies tasted worse now. I didn't want to. Sansa's laugh was short and humorless. No one who survives wants what they become, she said. That doesn't stop the world from demanding it. Jon met her gaze. Are you angry because I didn't tell you? He asked quietly. Or because I did it at all? Sansa held his eyes for a long moment. In the firelight, her face looked carved, all edges and restraint. Both, she said at last. I'm angry because you moved without me, because you think you can carry things alone and spare everyone else. Her voice dipped, softer but sharper. And I'm angry because you're right. They needed it. Jon exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight. I didn't do it for pride, he said. I know, Sansa replied. If you did, I'd be terrified. Davos cleared his throat, uncomfortable. If I may, he said. What now? The lords will follow orders more easily, yes. But the South will hear of this, and they won't see a man trying to save his people. They'll see a rival. Jon's jaw tightened. Let them see, he said again. But the words felt less solid now that they were spoken in a smaller room. Sansa crossed to the table and unrolled a fresh parchment. The direwolf seal sat beside it, a little pool of gray wax. We need ravens, she said. To the houses, to the riverlands if anyone still answers. And Jon knew what she meant. He felt it like a bruise. To Dragonstone, he said. Sansa's eyes flicked to his crown. Yes, she said. If Daenerys Targaryen is what the stories say she is, she'll want to know why the North has crowned a king when she believes herself queen. Davos grimaced. Or she'll decide to fly north and burn us until we remember our manners. We need her dragons, Jon said. He hated the truth of it. He hated that winter could make kings beg to queens and queens beg to kings. We need dragonglass. We need her to see you as an ally, Sansa said. Not a threat. Jon stared at the parchment. How do we do that? Sansa dipped a quill, wrote quickly, then slid the parchment toward him without showing the words. By choosing every word as if it's a blade, she said. Because it is. Jon hesitated. He did not like words that were meant to cut. He preferred blades you could see. But he had chosen a crown. He had chosen the game whether he wanted it or not. He sat, crown cold on his brow, and took the quill. The ink smelled sharp, like burned pine. He wrote slowly, forcing his mind to clarity. To Daenerys of House Targaryen. He paused. The words felt strange. Queen, dragon, conqueror. a woman he had not met, yet whose shadow already fell across his war. He continued, "The North faces the dead. I have seen them. I have fought them. I have watched men rise with blue eyes and broken bones, and I swear to you the threat is real." He stopped again because the next words mattered most. "The North has chosen me as king not to defy you, but to survive. I will not kneel, but I will fight beside any who fights for the living. If you have dragons and dragonglass, bring them north. If you have doubts, send men to see the truth. Winterfell will host them." He set the quill down. The letter was plain, blunt. It was him. Sansa read it and frowned. "Too honest," she said. "Honesty can be weakness." Davos leaned in, scanning. "It's also harder to twist," he said quietly. "And twisting is what they'll try." Sansa's gaze lifted to Jon. "She'll still take 'I will not kneel' as an insult," she warned. Jon's eyes were tired. "Then she'll have to decide whether pride matters more than the world," he said. "And if it does, we'll die anyway." Sansa's lips pressed into a thin line. She did not argue, but Jon saw the calculation in her face. She had learned that you could be right and still lose. Another parchment waited. Sansa tapped it. "Now King's Landing," she said. Jon's stomach clenched. Cersei Lannister's name was a taste of poison. He remembered the lion banners, the gold cloaks, the smell of the capital streets. He remembered a boy king's cruel smile and a queen's cold eyes. He remembered how little mercy the South had ever offered. "What would I even say?" Jon asked. Sansa's voice was crisp. "You say nothing that gives her an opening. You say you are king. You say the dead are coming. You say you will not kneel. You say if she wants to live, she will send men and grain north." Her eyes sharpened. "And you expect her to refuse, because she is Cersei Lannister." Davos sighed. "Still, sending the raven costs nothing. Not sending it gives her room to say we never asked." Jon nodded reluctantly and wrote a shorter, colder letter to the queen he despised. He kept the words bare. "The dead are coming. Help or die." He almost smiled at the bluntness. When both ravens had been sealed, Sansa handed them to a guard with orders to send them immediately. The guard left and the room felt eater. For a moment, Jon allowed himself to sag in the chair. The crown's cold pressed down like a reminder that he could not rest. Sansa sat opposite him, fingers steepled. "There's something else," she said. Jon's eyes lifted. "What?" Sansa's gaze flicked to the door, ensuring they were alone. "The crown," she said. "Valyrian steel doesn't just appear. Someone put it there. Someone hid it. Someone wrote that message you found. Because you found a message, didn't you?" It was not a question. She knew him too well. Jon's throat tightened. He had not told her, yet she had guessed. "Yes," he admitted. Sansa's eyes narrowed. "What did it say?" Jon hesitated. He could feel the parchment's words like a brand. "Do not kneel." He could tell her that. That part was safe, almost. But the other part, for the wolf who carries the dragon. Jon swallowed. He saw Ned Stark's stone face again, sorrowful and stern. He saw Lyanna's statue in torchlight. He remembered the strange vision in the crown's stones. It said, Jon began and stopped. The lie formed in his mouth like rot. Sansa leaned forward. "Jon." Davos watched, silent. The Onion Knight's eyes were gentle, but there was steel in his attention. Davos had served kings. He had watched secrets destroy them. Jon exhaled slowly. "It said the crown was for the wolf who carries the dragon," he said at last. Silence hit the room like a closed door. Sansa did not blink. For a heartbeat, Jon saw nothing on her face at all, as if her mind had gone utterly still. Then her voice came, quiet and dangerous. "What does that mean?" Jon forced himself to meet her eyes. "I don't know," he said. It was true and it was not. He knew what it suggested. He did not know what to do with it. Sansa sat back, fingers tightening on the table's edge. "You do know," she said, "or you wouldn't be afraid to say it." Jon's mouth tightened. "Sansa." "No," she cut in, voice sharper. No more half-truths. Not between us. Not after everything. Her eyes flashed. If there's something about you, about your birth, about why this crown was hidden beneath Lyanna Stark's statue, then tell me. Jon's heart hammered. The room felt too small. The fire's crackle sounded like bones breaking. I don't know the whole truth, Jon said finally, but I've wondered. All my life. And now. He touched the crown unconsciously, fingertips brushing cold steel. Now it feels like the castle itself is telling me I'm something I don't understand. Sansa's expression softened only slightly, more a shifting of ice than melting. Then we find out, she said. We ask Bran Stark. We ask Samwell Tarly if he returns. We search every scrap of history we can. Because if you're going to wear that, she nodded at the crown, then every enemy you have will search too, and they will find the truth and use it as a weapon. Jon nodded once, feeling sick. A weapon, he repeated. Sansa's gaze was steady. Or a shield, she said, depending on how we hold it. Outside the window, the yard bustled. Men trained with spears, their breath steaming. Someone shouted an order. Someone laughed, briefly, at some small joke. Life continuing, stubborn as grass through snow. Jon watched them and felt the weight of his choices settle. He had thought taking a crown would end arguments. Instead, it had opened new doors. Doors to secrets, to war, to a future written by blood. He turned back to Sansa. "Help me," he said, the words raw. Sansa's eyes held his. "I am," she said simply. "But you have to let me." Jon nodded again. Felt like surrender and relief all at once. Then the door banged open without warning and a guard stepped in, breathless. "Your Grace," he said, stumbling over the title. "There's trouble in the courtyard. One of the lords, Lord Tallheart's nephew, refused the levy order. He's saying you've no right." Sansa rose instantly, anger flashing. Jon stood, crown cold and heavy. He looked at Davos, then at the guard. "Take me to him," Jon said. He walked out into the cold air, and as the snow touched the crown's black steel, it did not melt, clung like ash. The courtyard had become a ring without anyone choosing it. Men had gathered in a loose circle, drawn by the scent of conflict. Snow drifted down in slow flakes that softened the edges of armor and fur, catching in beards and lashes. A few torches burned despite daylight, because in winter daylight felt like an apology and fire felt like certainty. Jon stepped into the ring and the murmuring shifted. Heads turned. Eyes fixed on the crown first, then on his face, as if checking whether the metal had changed the man beneath it. The young lord stood near the well, cheeks flushed, hand on the hilt of his sword as if he needed it to keep himself upright. He was not older than 20, Jon guessed. His cloak bore the Tallheart stag, but it was too new, the embroidery too crisp. His father's cloak or his father's father's, handed down with the expectation that he would grow into it. "Your Grace," the guard announced unnecessarily, as if the title needed reinforcement. The young lord's eyes flicked to the crown. "So it's true," he said, voice cracking slightly. "You put a circle on your head and call yourself king." Jon stopped a few paces away. He did not reach for his sword. He kept his hands open at his sides. "I call myself king because the North needs one," he said evenly. The young lord's chin lifted. "The North needs a Stark," he shot back. "A true Stark, not..." His eyes darted, and Jon saw the word forming like spit. Bastard. Sansa Stark moved a fraction closer to Jon, her body a silent warning. Her eyes were bright and deadly. Jon's mouth tightened. "Say what you mean," he said. The young lord hesitated, caught between bravado and fear. Around him, his men shifted. Their hands hovered near weapons. The ring of onlookers leaned in, hungry for a reason to choose sides. "My uncle says you're not Winterfell," the young lord blurted. "He says you're a crow who came back from the dead and thinks that makes you special. He says you'll drag us into war with the Dragon Queen and the Southern Lions, and we'll be the ones who bleed while you sit your high seat." A mutter of agreement ran through a few men at the edge. Others spat. Tormund Giantsbane barked a laugh. If sitting saved you, kneeler, you'd have lived forever, he called. You think a chair stops death? Death sits where it likes. The young lord flushed deeper, anger rising. This is not your land, wildling, he snapped. Tormund shrugged. It will be your grave if you keep barking. Sansa's voice cut through the noise like a whip. Enough, she said. This is Winterfell. You will show respect or you will leave. The young lord's gaze flicked to her, then away, because Sansa Stark's eyes were not easy to meet. Lady Sansa, he said stiffly. With respect, you should be the one wearing that crown. You're Ned Stark's trueborn daughter. The North would follow you. The words landed like stones. Jon felt heat rise in his face again. Not from embarrassment, but from the old ache of being the thing people argued over. He glanced at Sansa. Her expression did not change, but he saw something flicker. Pain, pride, perhaps temptation, quickly buried. Sansa's voice was cold. The North chose, she said, and it chose him. The young lord's eyes widened. He had not expected her to say it so plainly. Jon took a slow breath. The crown's cold steadied him strangely. He looked at the young lord and saw not an enemy, but fear wearing armor it did not fit. Your uncle is wrong, Jon said, and you're wrong if you think this is about sitting. He stepped closer, just one pace, enough to make the young lord's men tense. I didn't take this crown to feel important, Jon said. I took it because the dead don't care who your father was. They don't care who you swear to. They come for you all the same. If I have to force you to prepare so your people survive, I will. The young lord's hand tightened on his sword hilt. You can't force me, he said, voice thin. Jon's eyes hardened. I can, he said simply. I can take your lands. I can take your men. I can take you and put you in a cell until the dead are at the gate. And if you think that's tyranny, then you don't understand what's coming. A hush fell. Davos Seaworth shifted, uneasy. He had seen kings speak that way and end up with knives in their backs. Sansa watched Jon as if seeing him anew. The young lord swallowed. His bravado faltered. You do that? He asked, voice quieter now. Jon held his gaze. If it saves lives, he said. Yes. Snow fell between them like ash. For a moment the young lord looked like a boy again, stripped of cloak and title. My father died for Robb Stark, he said, almost pleading. My brother died at the Dreadfort. We've lost everything. Now you're asking us to lose the rest. Jon's throat tightened. He wanted to tell the boy he understood. He wanted to say he had lost too. But understanding did not change the need. I'm asking you to fight, so there's something left to lose, Jon said. So your children don't die in the dark. The young lord's eyes flicked to the crown again. In the torchlight, the black steel looked like a band of night. Perhaps he imagined what it would be like to wear such power. Perhaps he imagined what it would be like to refuse. He did not draw his sword. Instead, slowly, he released his grip on the hilt and let his hand fall. My men will go, he said hoarsely. We'll send them. Jon nodded. Good, he said. He did not smile. Smiles could be seen as weakness. He hated that he was learning such things. The young lord hesitated, then took a step forward and, with visible effort, dropped to one knee in the snow. His cloak spread around him like a spilled banner. My king, he said, voice bitter and sincere all at once. Jon felt the words like a chain fastening. Rise, Jon said, and tell your uncle this. If he wants to argue about rights, he can do it with me in the hall, not in the yard where men might die for pride. The young lord rose, cheeks still red, but his eyes were clearer now. He bowed stiffly and backed away, his men following. The ring began to break apart, hunger for conflict unsatisfied. Men muttered as they drifted, some approving, some fearful. Tormund wandered up to Jon, grinning again. You spoke like a king, he said, as if congratulating Jon on a joke. Threatened to take his toys. That's how you handle pups. Jon's mouth tightened. That's not what I wanted, he said quietly. Tormund's grin softened. "Wanting has nothing to do with it," he said. "You either lead or you get eaten." He slapped Jon on the shoulder hard enough to jolt him, then sauntered off, calling to his wildlings. Davos approached next, eyes worried. "You handled it," he said, but his tone held caution. "Just careful. Threats win obedience, but they also win enemies." Jon looked out at the yard. Men were already returning to training, spears clacking, boots crunching snow. Life was stubborn. It had to be. Sansa stepped closer. "You did what you had to," she said. Jon turned to her. "Did I?" he asked. Sansa's gaze held his, unflinching. "Yes," she said. "And now you must keep doing it." Jon felt the crown's cold pressing down. He realized with a sick clarity that every decision from now on would be measured not by what was right, but by what kept the North together long enough to face the night. A raven flapped overhead, black against gray sky. Jon watched it and thought of the ravens they had sent. Words flying south. News. Challenge. He wondered which would arrive first, the answer from Dragonstone or the knives from King's Landing. Behind him, Ghost padded silently, nose lifted, ears forward. The direwolf's attention was fixed not on the men, but on the distant treeline beyond Winterfell's walls, as if he smelled something cold and wrong on the wind. Jon followed Ghost's gaze and felt his spine tighten. The storm was coming. And now the storm knew his name. The day ground on with the slow cruelty of winter. Orders were shouted, lists were made, men were counted like coins. Jon spent hours in the yard with the master-at-arms, watching spearmen drill until their arms shook. He walked the granaries with stewards who spoke in numbers that sounded like prayers. He listened to complaints, to fears, to plans that were half desperation and half bravado. By the time darkness fell, he felt scraped raw. The crown's cold never left him. Even when he took it off to eat, a brief, miserable meal of stew he barely tasted. He felt its pressure like a phantom on his brow. When he put it back on to meet another lord, it was as if the steel had been waiting, patient and certain. Night in Winterfell brought quieter dangers. The castle's torches cast pools of light and left long corridors in shadow. Snow muffled footsteps outside, but inside stone carried every sound too far. Men slept in barracks, in halls, in any room with a roof because the castle was too full of people and fear. Jon moved through it like a man walking through a crowded dream. He left the last council late. Sansa had stayed behind to argue with a steward about grain, her voice steady and sharp even when exhaustion pulled at her. Davos had gone to speak with the guards about Raven Watch. Jon had dismissed them because he needed one thing more than plans. He needed quiet. He walked toward his chambers alone, Ghost pacing ahead. The direwolf's paws made no sound on stone, but Jon could hear his breath, steady and low. Jon's own boots echoed, a foolish noise that made him feel exposed. The corridor he chose was one of Winterfell's older ones, lined with banners that hung limp in stale air. The torches here were fewer. The flame in each sconce trembled in drafts, throwing shadows that moved like living things. Jon's hand rested near his sword without thinking. He told himself it was habit. He told himself it was caution. Ghost stopped suddenly. Jon halted, torchlight catching in the direwolf's pale fur. Ghost's ears flattened. His lips pulled back slightly, showing teeth. Jon's pulse quickened. "What is it?" he whispered, though he did not know who he whispered to. Ghost's growl was low, nearly silent. Jon's gaze swept the corridor. Stone pillars, a narrow window slit spilling faint blue snowlight. A tapestry half-torn, depicting some old Stark victory. Nothing moved. Then Jon saw the shift. Just a fraction of darkness sliding in shadow beside a pillar, too smooth to be a draft. Jon's hand closed around Longclaw's hilt. The figure lunged. A hooded man, face covered by cloth, dagger flashing toward Jon's throat with a speed born of practice. Jon twisted, but he was tired, and the crown's cold seemed to slow the blood in his head for a heartbeat. The dagger nicked the edge of his cloak, sliding toward skin. Ghost struck like lightning. The direwolf slammed into the assassin's side, jaws closing on arm and cloth with a crunch that made Jon's stomach lurch. The dagger clattered to stone. The assassin screamed, muffled, as Ghost shook him like a rabbit. Jon drew Longclaw in a single motion, the Valyrian steel sword singing softly in its scabbard. He stepped forward, blade ready. But before he could strike, another shadow dropped from above. A girl in dark leather landed behind the assassin with the grace of a cat. Her hand flashed, a knife appearing as if conjured. She drove it into the assassin's calf, hard enough to pin him to the floor. The man howled. "Arya Stark," Jon breathed, shock and relief crashing together. Arya's face was half hidden by the hood of her own cloak, but her eyes, gray and sharp, were unmistakable. She looked older than Jon remembered, and younger, too, in the way a blade could look new no matter how many times it had been used. "You're noisy," Arya said, and there was a thin thread of amusement in her voice despite the situation. Jon stared at her as if she were a ghost come from the crypts. "Arya," he said again, stupidly. His chest tightened. "How?" "Later," Arya snapped, then looked down at the assassin. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The assassin writhed, trying to free his pinned leg, but Arya's knife held him fast. Ghost kept his jaws clamped on the man's arm, growling, eyes wild. The assassin spat through his cloth. "No one," he rasped. "I did it for..." Arya grabbed the man's hair and yanked his head back, exposing his throat. Her blade pressed lightly against skin. "Lie again and I'll open you like a pig," she said, voice flat and terrifying. Jon had heard men threaten like that before, but Arya's tone held no heat, no drama. It was a simple statement of fact. The assassin's eyes darted to Jon's crown. Even through the cloth, Jon saw fear flare. "It's the crown," the assassin choked out. "The crown comes off." Jon's blood chilled. "Who told you that?" he demanded. The man laughed, a broken sound. "Everyone," he rasped. "There's coin for it. There's coin for your head too, but the crown's worth more." Arya's eyes flicked to Jon, then back to the man. "From where?" she pressed. The assassin hesitated. Arya's blade pressed a fraction deeper, and a bead of blood welled. "King's Landing," the assassin whispered. "A man came north with Lannister gold. Said the queen would pay to end the northern rebellion before it grew teeth." Cersei, Jon thought, and the name tasted like bile. Of course, a queen who feared rivals would cut them down early. Jon looked down at the assassin. "Who is the man?" he asked. The assassin's eyes were wide now, as if seeing death in Jon's face. "I don't know his name," he gasped. "He wore a northern pin. A wolf. Said he spoke for the true Starks." Sansa, Jon thought. But it could not be. Or could it? No, Sansa was too smart to do something so crude. Too smart to hire a knife. Yet the man could have lied or been misled, or worse, someone could have used the Stark name like a mask. Arya's gaze sharpened. "A wolf pin," she repeated. "That narrows it to half the north." Jon's throat tightened. Ghost's growl vibrated through the corridor like thunder trapped in stone. Guards shouted in the distance, drawn by the noise. Footsteps pounded closer. Jon crouched beside the assassin, eyes hard. "Tell me everything you know," he said. "Every face, every place, every word. If you lie, you die." The assassin's eyes flicked to Longclaw, then to the crown. Fear made him honest. He babbled names. Taverns, roads, a merchant caravan that carried more than grain, a meeting in a barn near the King's Road. Jon listened, storing each detail like kindling. Each could burn later. When the guards arrived, torches flaring, they froze at the sight. Ghost holding a man down, Arya Stark crouched like a shadow with a knife, Jon standing over them with crown and sword, looking every inch the king he had declared himself. "What is this?" a guard demanded, eyes wide. "An assassin," Jon said, voice cold. "Take him, bind him, bring him to the dungeons, and send for Lady Sansa Stark and Davos Seaworth. Now." The guards moved clumsily, hands shaking as they pried Ghost away. Ghost resisted until Jon put a hand on his neck and murmured softly, The direwolf released with a final growl, teeth slick with blood. Arya rose, wiping her blade on the assassin's cloak as if it were nothing. She looked at Jon with a strange expression. Something like pride, something like worry, something like the fierce protectiveness of a younger sister who had learned how fragile brothers were. "You really did it," Arya said, nodding at the crown. "You became a king." Jon's mouth tightened. "I didn't have a choice," he said. Arya snorted. "There's always a choice," she said. "You just picked the one that gets you killed fastest." Jon's lips almost curved despite himself. Then the humor died as quickly as it came. He looked at her more closely. Dirt under her nails, a faint scar along her jaw, eyes that had seen too much. "Where have you been?" he asked, voice low. Arya's gaze flicked away, a rare sign of discomfort. "Everywhere," she said. "Nowhere." She looked back at him sharply. "And apparently, I was gone 5 minutes and you decided to put a target on Winterfell's forehead." Jon's throat tightened. "I'm glad you're here," he said, and the words were too simple for what he meant. Arya stared at him a moment, then shrugged as if shrugging could hide feeling. "Someone has to keep you alive," she said. Footsteps approached again, lighter this time. Sansa appeared at the corridor's end, cloak thrown over her nightdress, hair loose around her shoulders like spilled fire. Davos hurried behind her, eyes wide. Sansa's gaze took in the scene. Blood on stone, guards hauling a bound man, Ghost's fur stained red, Arya standing with knife in hand. For a heartbeat, Sansa's face went blank with shock. Then her eyes landed on Arya and widened. "Arya?" she whispered, as if afraid the word would break. Arya's expression faltered, just a fraction. "Sansa," she said, voice awkward. The sisters stared at each other, the distance of years and horrors between them, and Jon felt something in his chest twist. There would be time for reunions later. The knight did not care. Davos stepped forward, focusing on what he could control. "Your Grace," he said, looking at Jon's face, then at the blood. "Are you hurt?" Jon shook his head. "Not tonight," he said. He nodded toward the corridor where the assassin had been. "But someone tried." Sansa's eyes hardened instantly, slipping into the armor she wore best. "Who?" she demanded. Jon's voice was flat. "Someone paid by King's Landing, and someone here helped." Sansa's mouth tightened. "Who?" Jon met her gaze. "He said the man wore a wolf pin," he said. "Said he spoke for the true Starks." Sansa's face went very still. Her eyes flicked to Arya, then back to Jon. "That's a lie," she said, voice sharp. "It has to be." Davos looked pained. "Or it's someone using your name," he said gently. Arya's eyes narrowed, knife still loose in her hand. "Or it's someone who thinks they're doing what's best," she said. "People tell themselves that when they're about to do something ugly." Sansa's jaw clenched. "Not in my house," she said. Jon felt the crown's cold pressing down, reminding him that every threat now was not only against him but against all of them. "Bring the man to the dungeons," he ordered the guards. "Post double watch on every gate. I want every raven checked before it leaves. No one leaves Winterfell without being seen." The guards nodded, anxious. Sansa's gaze stayed on Jon. "This is what I warned you about," she said softly, anger and fear braided together. "The moment you crowned yourself, you made enemies in every corner." Jon's voice was rough. "Then we'll find them," he said, "and we'll stop them." Arya stepped closer to Jon, eyes gleaming. "Good," she said. "I'm bored of running." Ghost pressed against Jon's leg, warm and solid. Jon looked down at the dire wolf, then at his sisters, then at the corridor stretching into darkness beyond. He had wanted quiet. Instead, he had a crown, 2 Stark sisters returned from different kinds of hell, and knives already moving inside his walls. The night deepened outside, snow falling heavier. Somewhere far away, beyond the reach of Winterfell's torches, something cold and patient listened to the sound of human fear and smiled without a mouth. The dungeons of Winterfell were colder than the crypts, Jon decided, because the dungeons were built for suffering. The crypts held honored dead. The dungeons held the living who had earned hatred. The air down here smelled of damp straw and old sweat. Chains hung from iron rings set into stone. The torchlight painted the walls in trembling gold, but the shadows were thick, swallowing edges. Water dripped in a steady rhythm, each drop striking the same puddle as if the castle was counting time. The assassin had been stripped of his outer cloak and searched. They found no sigil, no identifying marks. His hands were calloused, his arms scarred with old burns. Professional. His face, once the cloth was torn away, was narrow and forgettable, the kind of face that could vanish in any crowd. He sat bound to a chair with rope around his chest and arms. Blood seeped from where Ghost had bitten him, staining the cloth wrapped around the wound. His eyes darted when Jon entered, finding the crown first as if it were a blade. Jon stood before him. Arya lurked at his side like a shadow with teeth, knife turning idly in her fingers. Sansa stood a step back, hands clasped, shoulders straight. Davos held a lantern, light pooling on the assassin's face. Jon looked at the man and felt a strange emptiness. He had expected anger, perhaps, rage at being hunted in his own home. Instead, he felt tired. This was what crowns brought. Men willing to kill because someone else had whispered coin into their ear. "Tell me," Jon said, voice quiet. The quiet made it sharper. "The name of the man who hired you." The assassin swallowed. His lips were cracked. "I told you," he rasped. "I don't know." Arya's knife stopped spinning. "You know more than you're saying," she said calmly. "People always do." The assassin's gaze flicked to her. Fear flashed. He had felt her blade at his throat earlier. He believed her. Jon leaned in slightly. "Where did you meet him?" he asked. The assassin's eyes darted. "A barn," he said hoarsely. "Near the King's Road." He came with 2 guards, northern men. He wore a cloak with fur trim and a pin, wolf's head, silver. Sansa's jaw tightened. "Half the North wears wolf pins," she said coldly. The assassin shrugged as much as his bindings allowed. "He wanted it to be seen," he said. "Wanted me to know who he claimed to be." Davos's eyes narrowed. "That's a show," he murmured. "A man truly betraying wouldn't advertise." Sansa's gaze sharpened on Davos. "Unless he wanted to," she said. "Unless he wanted the North to tear itself apart over suspicion." Jon felt the truth of that. The easiest way to win a war was to make your enemy fight himself. Arya stepped closer to the assassin, knife tip tracing the air near his cheek. "Did he say he spoke for the true Starks?" she asked. The assassin nodded quickly. "Yes," he said. "He said the bastard king was a mistake. He said Winterfell needed Stark blood, not whatever you are." His eyes flicked to Jon's crown, then away. Jon's chest tightened. "What did he want?" Jon asked. "The crown? My death." The assassin's mouth twisted. "Both," he admitted. "He said if the crown was taken, the North would split. Some would call it a sign the gods rejected you. If you died too, someone else could be raised in your place. Someone more willing to kneel, or someone who would fight the South instead of the dead. Either way, he said, the North would be weakened." Sansa's voice was quiet and lethal. "And the South would smile," she said. The assassin flinched. Jon stared at him, mind racing. A northern man with Lannister gold. A wolf pin. A desire to split the North. Could be a lesser lord hungry for power. It could be a man planted by King's Landing. Could be both. "Did he give you a name?" Jon asked. The assassin shook his head. "No." "He called himself a friend," he said bitterly. "Friends don't pay you in gold to murder men." Arya's knife hovered. "What did he look like?" she pressed. The assassin hesitated, thinking. "Tall," he said slowly. "Broad. Hair dark. Beard short. Scar on his right hand. Like a burn." He squinted as if pulling memory out of fog. "He had nice gloves. Too nice for a man who pretends to be just another northern lord." Davos's eyes narrowed. "A merchant," he murmured. or a man who wants to appear one? Sansa crossed her arms, thinking. We have merchants in Winterfell now, she said. Traders, sellswords, refugees. Anyone could hide. Jon's jaw tightened. We find him, he said. Sansa's gaze snapped to Jon. How? She demanded. By questioning every man with a wolf pin? You'll make enemies out of half our allies. Jon's voice was low. Then we do it carefully, he said. Arya smiled slightly, a grim curve. I can do careful, she said, and Jon did not like how much he believed her. Davos shifted uneasily. Your Grace, he said, and the title still sounded strange in his mouth. Interrogation is one thing, justice is another. What do we do with this man? Jon looked at the assassin again. The man's eyes were defiant now, as if he knew death was close and wanted to greet it with some shred of pride. I was paid, the assassin said, voice rough. I did what I was hired to do. I failed. Kill me and be done. Jon's fingers tightened. Old instincts rose. Execute him. Send a message. Be stern. The North respected harsh justice, or pretended to, but he was king now, and kings had to think beyond one death. Jon leaned closer. You failed, he said quietly, and you're going to help me make sure no one else tries. The assassin's eyes narrowed. How? Jon straightened. You're going to write a letter, Jon said, to the man who hired you. You're going to tell him you succeeded, that you took the crown, that Jon Snow is dead. And you're going to tell him where to meet you for the payment. Sansa's eyes widened. That's risky, she said instantly. If he suspects. He won't, Arya said, voice calm. Not if the Lou. Tur is right. The assassin laughed, hoarse. You think he'll come? He'll send another knife. Jon's voice remained steady. Then we'll catch another knife, he said. But if he comes, we take him. We learn who he truly is, and we cut out the rot before it spreads. Davos exhaled slowly, half approval and half worry. You're thinking like a king, he said softly. Jon almost flinched at the phrase. I'm thinking like a man who doesn't want to die because someone else is afraid, he said. Sansa's gaze was sharp. Where would you set the meeting? She asked. Jon looked at the assassin. Where did you meet him before? He asked. The man swallowed. The barn, he said. 2 miles north of the King's Road. Half collapsed. Old hay. Smells like piss. Jon nodded. Then we use it, he said. Sansa's mouth tightened. And you think this will be enough? She asked. One man? One trap? There will be more. Jon looked at her. The firelight caught in her hair like embers. Then we build something that can hold, he said. We build a spine inside Winterfell. Runners. Eyes. People who belong to us, not to coin. Davos nodded slowly. A network, he murmured. Like Varys, only northern. Arya's eyes gleamed. I can find people, she said. The ones who don't want to be found. Sansa's gaze flicked to Arya, wary. We do not become like them, she said. Not completely. Arya's smile was thin. The dead won't care what kind of people we are, she said. Jon lifted a hand, cutting through the brewing argument. Enough, he said. We do what we must, but we do it for the living, not for power. He turned back to the assassin. Write the letter, he said. If you do, you live for now. If you don't, you die tonight. Choose. The assassin stared at Jon for a long moment, then spat blood onto the stone. Give me quill, he rasped, and give me something for the pain. Jon nodded to Davos, and Davos moved to fetch ink and parchment. Sansa watched with hard eyes, and Arya watched like a predator watching prey decide whether to run. As the assassin began to write with shaking hands, Jon felt the crown's cold press down. He realized this was what kingship would be. Bargains with devils, choices between ugly and uglier, the constant balancing of mercy and fear. When the letter was finished, Jon read it. The assassin had written in a crude hand, but the message was clear. It is done. The crown is mine. Jon Snow is dead. Meet me for payment at Shiver Ford's old barn, before dawn. Jon's stomach clenched at the words "Jon Snow is dead." He had read those words once before in men's eyes. It never got easier. He handed the letter to Sansa. "Seal it," he said. "Send it with someone who can run without being seen." Sansa's gaze narrowed. "Arya," she said. Arya grinned. "Feral." "I can run," she said. Sansa's voice was flat. "You will not go alone," she said. Arya's grin faded slightly. "I don't need." "Yes, you do," Sansa cut in. "Not because you're weak, because this is not just your life. It's all of ours." Arya's eyes flashed, but after a moment she nodded, stiffly. "Fine," she said. "Bring a slow one. I'll drag them." Jon almost smiled again, then sobered. "We'll send two," he decided. "One to deliver, one to watch the Watcher. No mistakes." Davos nodded. "I know men who can do that," he said. Jon looked at the assassin one last time. "Bind him in a cell," Jon ordered. "If he tries to escape, kill him. If he speaks to anyone, cut out his tongue." The harshness of his own words startled him, but he did not soften them. Not now. The guards hauled the assassin away. As the dungeons quieted again, Sansa turned to Jon, eyes intense. "This is only the beginning," she said. Jon nodded. He felt it too. The crown had awakened something in the north, and it had awakened something in their enemies. Arya slipped closer to Jon, looking up at him with those gray eyes that held too much. "Do you feel different?" she asked, nodding at the crown. Jon hesitated. "I feel watched," he admitted. Arya's mouth twisted. "Good," she said. "Maybe you'll stop walking alone in dark corridors." Jon huffed a breath. "Maybe," he said. They climbed back up into Winterfell's colder air. Snow still fell, thick now. The yard was quiet, torches burning like little stubborn suns. Jon paused at the top of the stairs and looked toward the crypt entrance across the yard, half buried in snow. He thought of the crown hidden behind Lyanna's statue for years, waiting for a moment like this. He wondered what else waited. Dawn came pale and reluctant, a thin light that made the snow look like ash. Winterfell woke slowly, as if the castle itself resented the effort. Men moved through the yard with stiff limbs, boots crunching frozen ground, breath puffing like smoke from small chimneys. Jon did not sleep. He tried, lying in his bed with the crown set on the table beside him. But whenever he closed his eyes, he saw pale stones reflecting something cold and far away. He heard the assassin's words again. The crown comes off and the certainty behind them. He felt as if he had stepped onto ice that might crack at any moment. When the first gray light seeped through his window slit, Jon rose and went to the Godswood. Winterfell's Godswood was an island of quiet inside stone walls. Snow lay thick among the trees, muffling sound. The air smelled of pine and old earth. At its heart the weirwood stood, massive and white, its leaves red as fresh blood against the gray sky. The carved face in its trunk stared out with eyes that seemed too knowing. Bran Stark sat beneath it in his chair, wrapped in furs. He looked small and fragile, and yet there was something in his stillness that made men step softly around him. Jon had grown used to that strangeness. Bran's gaze that seemed to look through the world rather than at it. His words that sometimes sounded like echoes. Sansa stood near Bran, cloak drawn tight, hands clasped. She turned when Jon approached, eyes searching his face. Jon stopped a few paces from Bran. Ghost lay at his feet, white fur dusted with snow, head on paws, eyes open and watchful. Bran's gaze lifted to the crown almost immediately. Jon felt the cold steel on his brow in the weirwood stare. "You're king now," Bran said, voice calm, as if stating the weather. Jon swallowed. "Yes," he said. The word felt strange in the Godswood, where old gods did not care about kings. Sansa's voice was crisp. "Bran," she said, "we need to know about it. The crown. Where it came from. Why it was hidden." Bran blinked slowly. His eyes were distant. "It was meant to be found," he said. Jon's throat tightened. "By me?" he asked. Bran's gaze settled on Jon. and for a moment Jon felt as if the weirwood's eyes had opened in his chest. "By the one who would wear it," Bran said. "By the one who would stand when others knelt." Sansa's jaw clenched. "That's not an answer," she said sharply. "Who hid it, Bran?"
Lyanna Stark?
Ned Stark. Someone else. Bran's expression did not change. "Lyanna Stark knew," he said quietly. Jon's pulse quickened. "Knew what?" he asked. Bran's eyes flicked to the weirwood, then back. "Who you are," he said. The words hit Jon like a blow. He felt his breath catch. He felt Sansa go still beside him. Jon's voice came out rough. "Bran," he said. "What are you talking about?" Bran's gaze remained steady, but his voice seemed to come from far away. "You were never just Jon Snow," he said. "You were never just a bastard of Winterfell." Sansa's face was pale now, eyes wide. "Bran," she whispered, anger and fear mingling. "Tell us." Bran's fingers rested on the fur in his lap. Still. "You were born in the Tower of Joy," he said. "In Dorne, when the war was ending and men were dying for lies." Jon's world tilted. He had heard the name in stories. Tower of Joy, a place where Kingsguard died and Ned Stark returned with grief in his eyes. It had always been a distant tale, a piece of history. Now it was a hook in Jon's ribs. Jon forced his voice. "My mother," he said. "You know who she was." Bran's eyes held his. "Lyanna Stark," he said. The godswood went very quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause among the trees. Jon's throat burned. His mouth opened, but no words came. His mind tried to reject it, tried to push the truth away like a hand against a closing door.
Lyanna Stark.
His aunt, the woman whose statue hid the crown. Sansa made a sound, half gasp, half laugh, disbelieving. "No," she said sharply. "That's Bran, that's impossible." Bran's voice was gentle, almost pitying. "It happened," he said. "I saw it. I saw her in the tower. I saw her dying. I saw her hold you and ask Father to promise." Jon's chest tightened so hard he thought he might break. "Promise what?" he whispered. Bran's gaze drifted again, as if watching a memory. "To protect you," he said. "To keep you hidden. To keep you alive." Jon's hands clenched into fists. "Why?" he demanded, voice suddenly harsh. "Why would I need to be hidden from my own family?" Bran's eyes focused again, and in them Jon saw something like sorrow. "Because your father was Rhaegar Targaryen," Bran said. The words struck like thunder. For a heartbeat Jon could not breathe. The world narrowed to the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Rhaegar Targaryen, the prince who had kidnapped Lyanna Stark, who had started the war. The dragon prince whose name was spoken in Winterfell like a curse. Jon's mouth tasted like ash. "No," he said, shaking his head. "No, that can't be true." Sansa's face was white as snow. Her eyes flicked between Bran and Jon, mind racing, pieces falling into place with sickening speed. "That would mean," she began, then stopped because the meaning was too large. Bran's voice remained calm, uncaring of how it shattered them. "It means you have Stark blood," he said, "and Targaryen blood. Wolf and dragon." Jon looked down without meaning to, as if he could see blood through skin. He felt the crowns cold on his brow, suddenly unbearable. Wolf and dragon. The parchment's words surfaced. For the wolf who carries the dragon. Jon's stomach lurched. He turned away, stumbling a step. Ghost rose instantly, pressing against him, steadying him with warm fur. Jon's breath came in harsh puffs. He stared at the snow, at his boots leaving dark prints. "All my life," he whispered, voice cracking. "All my life I thought I was the stain on my father's honor." Sansa's voice was tight. "He loved you," she said fiercely, as if defending Ned Stark even now. "He took it on himself. He let everyone believe, because he wanted you safe." Jon's eyes burned. He swallowed hard. "Safe from what?" he asked, though he already knew. "Robert Baratheon," Sansa said, voice bitter. "The war's victor. The man who hated Targaryens enough to kill children. Jon's stomach twisted. He remembered Robert Baratheon's booming laugh in stories, his strength, his hammer. He remembered the way men spoke of the slaughter of Rhaegar's children, and how some had cheered and some had looked away. "You are the last," Bran said softly. "The last son of Rhaegar Targaryen." Jon's laugh came out strangled. "Last," he echoed. "I'm not even." He stopped. He did not know what he was anymore. Sansa stepped closer, voice low and urgent. "Does anyone else know?" she asked Bran. Bran blinked slowly. "Not yet," he said. Sansa's jaw clenched. "Then no one else can," she said. "Not until we decide." Jon looked at Sansa, eyes raw. "You wanted me to wear the crown," he said. "Now you know what it is." Sansa's gaze held his, fierce and frightened. "It's both," she admitted. "It's a Stark crown and it's—" her voice faltered. "It's something else. Something that could burn us." Jon touched the crown, fingers trembling. It was cold, steady, indifferent. "I didn't want a throne," Jon said hoarsely. "I wanted to stop the dead." Bran's voice was quiet. "The dead are coming," he said, "and so are the living." Jon looked at him. "What do you mean?" he asked. Bran's eyes drifted to the weirwood, as if seeing through it into the far distance. "Ravens fly," he said. "News travels. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister will hear you called king and she will sharpen her knives. In Dragonstone, Daenerys Targaryen will hear you wear Valyrian steel and she will feel a threat in her bones." Jon's pulse quickened. "Can you see them?" he asked. Bran's gaze returned, distant. "I can see pieces," he said. "Not everything, but enough to know that your crown will draw them like blood draws wolves." Jon swallowed, throat raw. He glanced at Sansa. Her face was tight with calculation. "We keep this secret," Sansa said, voice firm. "Your parentage. All of it. If the North knows you're a Targaryen, half will call you a dragon and half will call you a monster. If Daenerys knows, she will see you as a rival." Jon's mouth tightened. "I don't want to be anyone's rival," he said. Sansa's eyes softened briefly. "Wanting doesn't matter," she said, and Jon heard Tormund's words echoed in hers. Jon looked back to Bran. "Why tell me now?" he asked, voice rough. "Why not before I crowned myself?" Bran's gaze was steady, and in it Jon saw something like inevitability. "Because you were not ready," Bran said. "And because the crown was not ready." Jon's stomach clenched. "The crown," he whispered. "It's not just metal." Bran tilted his head slightly. "Valyrian steel remembers," he said. "It holds heat and blood and old fires. It was forged in a place the world no longer has." Jon felt a shiver crawl down his spine. He remembered the moment when he had put the crown on and heard everything sharpen. He remembered the strange vision in the stones. Sansa's voice was low. "Bran," she said, "can you tell us who hid it? Truly." Bran's gaze drifted once more. "Eddard Stark hid it," he said. "But it belonged to Lyanna Stark. It was given to her in secret. Promise. A symbol." His eyes returned to Jon. "He hid it because he feared what it meant. He left it because he knew one day you might need it." Jon's eyes stung. He thought of Ned Stark's statue in the crypt, stone-faced, stern and sorrowful. Ned had carried the secret like a wound, and now Jon wore its edge on his brow. Jon took the crown off slowly and held it in his hands. The cold bit his palms. He stared at the wolves and dragons chasing each other, locked in iron. "What am I supposed to do with this?" he asked, voice almost breaking. Sansa's voice was steady. "What you've been doing," she said. "You protect the North. You prepare for the dead. And you keep this," she nodded to the crown, "from destroying us before the winter does." Jon's gaze lifted to the weirwood face, red sap gleaming like blood. He wondered if the old gods cared that a dragon's son wore a wolf's crown. Bran's voice was soft. "You will have to choose," he said. Jon looked at him. "Choose what?" he asked. Bran's eyes were deep, too old. "Who you will be when the world demands your fire," he said. Jon's hands tightened on the crown until his knuckles went white. Outside the Godswood, Winterfell's walls held back the wind, but Jon could feel it anyway, slipping through cracks, whispering. The world beyond was wide and hungry. He had thought taking a crown would make his path clearer. Instead, it had split the road into two, and both led into darkness. The wind at Dragonstone tasted of salt and old fire. Daenerys Targaryen stood on a stone terrace carved by hands long dead, her dark cloak snapping around her legs like a banner that refused to be still. The sky was a bruised gray, clouds racing, and below the black cliffs the sea threw itself against rock with tireless fury. Dragonstone had always been a fortress built for storms. It welcomed them like kin. A raven perched on the parapet, feathers ruffled, eyes sharp. Missandei held out a hand with practiced gentleness, and the bird hopped onto her wrist, a scrap of parchment tied to its leg. Daenerys watched the exchange with a face that revealed little. Queens learned to make their expressions into weapons. In her mind, she was already weighing the message's possible shapes. A plea, a threat, an insult, a trap. Missandei untied the parchment and handed it to her. The wax seal was gray and stamped with a direwolf. The North. Tyrion Lannister stood a step back, hands tucked into his sleeves, shoulders hunched against the wind. His mismatched eyes were alert, amused only by habit now, as if the world had wrung laughter out of him and left him with cleverness instead. Grey Worm waited nearby, immobile as a carved soldier. The Unsullied did not fear storms, only failure. Daenerys broke the seal and read. Her eyes moved quickly. Her mouth remained still. When she finished, she read it again. By the time she lowered the parchment, the wind had nothing on the storm in her expression. Tyrion watched her carefully. "Bad news?" he asked mildly, as if asking about the weather. Daenerys held the letter out. "Read," she commanded. Tyrion took it and scanned. His brows lifted slightly at the line, "I will not kneel," then rose a fraction higher at "The North has chosen me as king." "Well," Tyrion said softly when he finished, handing it back. "He's direct." Daenerys's eyes flashed. "He crowns himself king," she said, voice cold, "and tells me he will not kneel." Tyrion shrugged, careful. "He also tells you the dead are real," he said, "and asks for alliance." Daenerys's fingers tightened on the parchment. "An alliance," she repeated, as if tasting a foreign word. "With a man who defies me before he meets me." Grey Worm's voice was quiet. "If he is enemy, we burn," he said simply. Missandei's gaze flicked to Daenerys, gentle but concerned. "He says he has seen the dead," she said softly. "If it is true." Daenerys's eyes were fixed on the sea, as if she could see the North beyond it. "It is true," she said, voice low. "I have heard whispers, old stories, the kind men laugh at until teeth are on their throats." She inhaled sharply. "But he could have written as a lord. He could have written as a man asking help. He wrote as a king telling me what he will not do." Tyrion leaned on the parapet, cloak whipping. "Perhaps because he believes he needs to," he said. "Northern lords are not known for their love of submission. If he knelt to you without resistance, he might lose them before he could march them." Daenerys's mouth tightened. "He should lose them then," she said, "if they will not follow their rightful queen." Tyrion's eyes narrowed. "And if your rightful realm is full of corpses," he said softly, "what will you rule?" Daenerys's gaze snapped to Tyrion. "I will not be challenged by a Lannister," she said. Tyrion bowed his head slightly. "Not my intention," he said. "Just a question the dead will ask anyway." Daenerys turned away, cape snapping. She paced the terrace, boots striking stone. Her mind was a coil of fire and ice. The North, Winterfell, a crowned man with Stark blood, calling himself king in the place she had never conquered. The letter spoke of duty, of survival. Yet beneath it she felt the heartbeat of something else. The stubborn defiance that had always been Westeros's curse. She stopped, eyes on the jagged ridge where one of her dragons perched. Drogon's dark shape was half silhouette against the storm sky, wings folded, tail lashing slowly. His eyes glowed like embers. When Daenerys looked at him, she felt the old comfort of power. Dragons did not argue, but dragons also did not understand politics. They understood dominance. And the North had crowned its own dominance in Valyrian steel, if the rumors her scouts whispered were true. Daenerys's gaze returned to the letter. Valyrian steel crown. The phrase itself sounded like a challenge whispered in High Valyrian. Tyrion, she said, voice quiet now, dangerous in its calm. Who is Jon Snow? Tyrion hesitated. He was the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, he said, a bastard of Eddard Stark. He helped unite the wildlings. He shrugged. He seems honorable. Annoyingly so. Daenerys's mouth tightened. Honorable men die, she said. Not always, Tyrion said. Sometimes they make other people die for them. Daenerys's eyes flashed, but she did not lash out. If he is honorable, she said, then why crown himself? Tyrion spread his hands. Because he thinks he must, he said again. Because he's surrounded by men who obey strength and symbols. Because he knows the dead won't wait while lords debate. Daenerys stared at the sea. Waves crashed tireless. She felt the weight of her own claim settle like armor. She had crossed the world to take what she believed was hers. She had lost a husband, lost a child, lost friends, lost innocence. She had burned men and watched them scream. She had freed slaves and watched them become masters. She had learned that every gift came with teeth. And now, in the North, a man had taken a crown and declared himself king, and he was asking her to set aside the one thing that had driven her through every storm, the certainty that she was meant to rule. How many ships are ready? Daenerys asked suddenly. Grey Worm answered instantly. All that can sail, he said. The seas are rough, but we can. Missandei looked concerned. To where? She asked. Daenerys held th. He led her up, letting the wind tug at it. North, she said. Tyrion's eyes widened slightly. Your Grace, he began, cautious. It may be wise to send envoys first, to see him, to judge. Daenerys's gaze was hard. He has already judged me, she said. He wrote, I will not kneel before I ever saw my face. Tyrion's mouth tightened. Or he wrote it to keep his people from fracturing, he said. He's trying to hold the North together. If we go north with dragons without understanding, we might make it worse. Daenerys's fingers tightened around the parchment until it crumpled slightly. She forced herself to smooth it again. Control. She needed control. I will go, she said, voice firm. Not as a beggar, not as a conqueror. As a queen who intends to save the world, she will rule. Tyrion studied her, then nodded slowly. Then I will go with you, he said. Because if this becomes a clash of crowns, someone will need to speak before fire does. Daenerys's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but it vanished. Prepare, she commanded. Gather what we can, dragonglass, men, supplies, and send word to the captains. We sail within 2 days. Grey Worm bowed his head, already turning to give orders. Missandei remained, eyes on Daenerys, voice soft. Are you afraid? She asked. Daenerys looked at the sea again. The wind tugged at her hair. I am always afraid, she said quietly, but fear does not rule me. She did not say the deeper fear, that the North's crowned king might be something she could not bend without breaking, and that breaking him might break what they needed most. Behind her, Drogon lifted his head and gave a low rumble, as if sensing her thoughts. The sound vibrated through stone and bone, a reminder that she still commanded monsters. Daenerys looked toward the horizon where the sea met sky. Somewhere beyond that line was Winterfell, buried in snow, with a man wearing a crown made of the same ancient steel as her family's blades. Somewhere beyond that line was a war no throne could win alone. She folded the letter carefully, as if folding a blade, and tucked it into her cloak. Let him be king, she murmured to herself, too soft for anyone to hear. For now. Then she turned and walked back into Dragonstone's dark halls, carrying the storm with her. The night had a way of making crowns heavier. Jon stood on Winterfell's battlements, cloak pulled tight, the Valyrian steel circlet cold against his brow. Snow fell in slow spirals, caught by wind that moved through the castle like a living thing searching for cracks. Below, the yard glowed with scattered firelight. Men drilled even in darkness, spears thrusting in unison, their breath rising like smoke from a battlefield. The rhythm of their movements was almost comforting, a reminder that the living could still choose to act. Beyond the walls, the world was a sheet of shadow and snow. The treeline in the distance looked like a jagged mouth. Jon's eyes stayed fixed there. Arya Stark leaned on the stone nearby, hood up, arms crossed. She watched Jon more than she watched the trees, as if she had decided he was the more likely threat. There was something in her stillness that reminded Jon of Ghost. An animal patience, a readiness to strike without warning. Sansa Stark climbed the stairs onto the battlements carrying a torch. The flame painted her face in warm orange that did not reach her eyes. She looked exhausted, but her spine was straight. "The letter went," she said without greeting, stepping to Jon's side. Jon nodded. "And the trap?" he asked. Sansa's mouth tightened. "Arya's runners left before dusk," she said. "They'll deliver it and watch. If the man comes, we'll know." Arya snorted. "If he comes," she said. "If he's not already inside the walls." Jon's jaw tightened. That thought had been gnawing at him since the assassin's words. A wolf pin, a friend, a man who claimed to speak for the true Starks. Winterfell was full of wolves now, in banners and in people's hearts. It would not be hard for someone to hide among them. Davos Seaworth emerged behind Sansa, stepping carefully on the icy stone. He approached and offered Jon a tired nod. "Your Grace," he said, voice still awkward with the title. Jon glanced at him. "Any word from the wall?" he asked. Davos shook his head. "Nothing," he said. "Ravens still come, but they bring old reports. Nothing new." He hesitated. "Sometimes silence is worse." Jon stared out into the dark. "Sometimes silence is the dead taking a breath," he said. Arya's hand moved to her hip, fingers brushing the hilt of needle. "Something's out there," she said softly, almost pleased. Jon did not answer because he did not know. He felt it too. Something faint on the wind, a metallic sharpness, like frost on iron. Could have been nothing. Could have been memory. Could have been the crown's cold making him imagine threats in every gust. They stood in silence, listening. The yard below continued its rhythm. Boots, spears, shouted orders. Life making noise to convince itself it still existed. Then, far off, beyond the trees, a faint light flickered. Blue. It was small, a glimmer between branches, gone as quickly as it came. It could have been a will-o'-the-wisp, a trick of snow catching moonlight. But the color was wrong. Moonlight was silver. Firelight was orange. This was ice fire. Jon's blood went cold, as if the crown had poured its chill into his veins. Sansa made a sound like a caught breath. "What was that?" she whispered. Davos's face tightened. He had seen the dead once, and the memory had left its mark. "No," he murmured, as if refusing. Arya straightened slightly, eyes narrowing. "You feel it," she said, not as a question. Jon nodded once. They stood in silence, listening. The yard below continued its rhythm. Boots, spears, shouted orders. Life making noise to convince itself it still existed. Then, far off, beyond the trees, a faint light flickered. Blue. It was small, a glimmer between branches, gone as quickly as it came. It could have been a will-o'-the-wisp, a trick of snow catching moonlight. But the color was wrong. Moonlight was silver. Firelight was orange. This was ice fire. Jon's blood went cold, as if the crown had poured its chill into his veins. Sansa made a sound like a caught breath. "What was that?" she whispered. Davos's face tightened. He had seen the dead once, and the memory had left its mark. "No," he murmured, as if refusing. Arya's hand moved to her hip, fingers brushing the hilt of needle. "Something's out there," she said softly, almost pleased. Jon turned away from the battlement and looked down into the yard. Men trained, unaware. He could shout, sound horns, send the castle into panic. Panic killed as surely as blades. He forced himself to breathe. "Davos," Jon said, voice steady. "Quietly wake the commanders. No shouting. No horns yet. Get the men ready to move to the walls without causing a stampede." Davos nodded and hurried away, moving faster than his age suggested. Jon looked at Sansa. "Get the stewards," he said. "Bring the children and the old into the inner keep. Tell them it's a drill. Keep it calm." Sansa's eyes were bright, but she nodded. "I'll do it," she said. She hesitated, then touched Jon's arm briefly. "Be careful." Jon met her gaze. "I will," he said, though he did not know what careful meant against the dead. Sansa left, torchlight bobbing as she descended the stairs. Arya remained. "So," she said lightly, as if they were discussing weather, "this is what being king gets you. People try to kill you, and dead things come for everyone." Jon's mouth tightened. "It came either way," he said. Arya nodded. "Yes," she said, "but now you have to pretend you're not scared." Jon looked at her. In the darkness, her face was half shadow, eyes bright. "Are you scared?" he asked. Arya considered. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Then I remember fear is just another thing to kill." Jon almost smiled, then looked back toward the treeline, where the blue points still glimmered faintly. He felt the crown's cold pressing down like a reminder of his blood, wolf and dragon. He did not know what that meant yet. He only knew it meant he could not run. He stepped closer to the battlemen, T's edge, and raised his voice, not in a shout, but in a command that carried. "Archers," he called down into the yard. "To the walls." Quietly, men looked up, startled. When they saw the crown and his expression, their surprise sharpened into fear. Fear moved fast, but discipline could move faster if the voice guiding it was strong. Jon watched them begin to shift, like a body responding to a wound. Behind him, Ghost's growl never stopped. Jon looked out at the blue lights again. He could not see bodies. He could not see faces. He could only see that cold glow, patient and sure, waiting at the edge of human sight. He thought of the crypts and the crown's message. "Let steel speak where tongues fail." Jon's hand moved to Longclaw's hilt. The Valyrian steel sword felt warm compared to the crown's cold. The North had a king now. The dead, it seemed, had noticed. And somewhere far to the south, ravens flew through storm winds carrying news of a crowned man in Winterfell. News that would draw queens and armies like moths to flame, even as the true darkness gathered at the trees. Snow fell thicker, torches flared. Men moved to positions, whispering prayers to gods that might not listen. Jon stood on Winterfell's walls with a crown of ancient steel and a sword that had slain the unnatural, and he realized with a calm that frightened him more than fear that he was no longer waiting for the storm. He was standing in it. The first arrow left the bow before Jon could stop it. It hissed through the snow and vanished into the dark beyond the walls. For a heartbeat there was nothing, only the wind dragging flakes sideways and the torchlight trembling along the battlements. Then something moved between the trees, an awkward, stumbling shape stepping out of shadow as if the dark had grown a limb. The wight did not hurry. It walked into the open with the slow certainty of a thing that did not care about distance or death. Its skin was pale and stiff with frost, its hair a wet rope frozen to its skull. One eye socket was empty, black as a pit. The other held that faint, unholy blue, a lamp behind a window. The arrow struck its chest with a dull thud and sank deep. The wight barely noticed. A murmur of fear rippled through the archers. Several drew again, hands shaking. Jon's mouth went dry. He had seen this beyond the wall. Still, there was something different about seeing it from Winterfell stone. Seeing a dead thing walking toward a home filled with children and sleeping men. "Hold," Jon said, voice low but hard. The archer who had fired, barely a man, cheeks raw, eyes wide, stared at Jon as if Jon had spoken a foreign tongue. Your Grace, he whispered, terrified. I said hold. Jon did not raise his voice, but the crown's weight made the words land heavy. No more arrows. The wight took another step, then another. Its boots, if the broken leather on its feet could be called boots, left no clear prints. The snow did not take it properly, as if the ground refused to remember it. Ghost's growl thickened. Arya's hand slid to needle's hilt. Down in the yard, men had stopped drilling. They looked up to the wall, seeing the tension, hearing it in the shape of stillness. The cold sharpened every sound. The creak of bowstrings, the faint rattle of armor, the distant snap of a torch as resin burned. The wight halted, head tilted. It seemed to look directly at Jon. Not at the wall, not at the archers. Jon. Jon felt the crown's cold press into his skin as if answering a touch. Behind the wight, deeper in the trees, another blue glow appeared. Then another, not rushing, not charging. Watching. Test, Jon realized. A finger pressed against a door to see if the hinge held. The young archer's breath came in panicked gasps. Let me shoot, he pleaded. Let me. No, Jon said. We don't waste steel and fear on a single corpse. He forced himself to speak as if he believed it. We learn. The wight raised its arms slowly, stiff as a puppet. The movement revealed something slung over its shoulder by a rope. A dead animal, perhaps a deer, its legs dangling. The carcass swung as the wight turned, showing the hollowed belly where something had been taken. Then the wight did something that made Jon's stomach clench. It picked up a handful of snow, packed it between dead fingers, and threw it, clumsily but deliberately, at the base of Winterfell's wall. The snow hit stone and burst, leaving only a dark smear where something beneath had been frozen and dragged. Mockery, a child's gesture, a message in a language of cold. Men on the battlements muttered curses. One archer sobbed softly under his breath. A prayer turned into a broken sound. Jon stared into the treeline where the blue points floated. He imagined a figure taller than the rest, armor like ice, a face that was not a face. He did not see it clearly, yet he felt it, an attention pressing against him, ancient and patient. Davos, Jon said without looking away. Davos Seaworth stepped close, lantern held low to keep light from spilling outward. Your Grace, send men to the inner wall, Jon murmured. Quietly, close the outer gates. No horns yet. No panique. Davos nodded once and moved off like a shadow, whispering orders into the ears of captains who swallowed and obeyed. Arya leaned closer to Jon. If it comes closer, I can go down, she said, voice almost eager. Jon's jaw tightened. You'll stay where I can see you, he said. Arya snorted. That's not how I work. Jon looked at her, and for a heartbeat he saw her as a girl again, dirt on her knees, eyes too bright. Then he saw the blade she had become. Tonight, he said, you work how I say. Arya's eyes narrowed, but she did not argue. She watched the wight like a cat watches a rat. The wight stood in the snow and waited. Minutes passed. Snow thickened. The torches hissed as flakes hit flame. Jon's fingers went numb around the stone parapet. Then, as if bored, the wight turned and shuffled back toward the trees. The blue lights withdrew with it, fading one by one behind branches until the treeline was only a mouth of darkness again. A shudder ran through the men on the wall. Relief mixed with humiliation. The dead had come close enough to be seen and then left, as if to say, not yet. Soon, the young archer's bow dropped. He stared at Jon, eyes wet. Why didn't we kill it? He rasped. Jon looked at him. He could have offered comfort. He could have lied. Instead, he gave the truth shaped into something men could hold. Because it wanted us to shoot, Jon said. It wanted us to waste arrows and courage on one corpse while the rest watched. We don't give it what it wants. The archer swallowed, nodding as if desperate to believe Jon's certainty could be borrowed. Jon stared out at the dark again. The crown's cold had not eased. It sat on his brow like a hand reminding him that kings were measured not by victories, but by how they endured tests meant to break them. He turned away from the treeline and looked down at Winterfell's yard. Men were moving now, controlled, not panicked. Closing gates, shifting patrols, bringing ladders, carrying bundles of kindling to light more torches. Life organizing itself around fear. Sansa Stark appeared below, moving with purpose through the yard, cloak flaring behind her. She looked up at the wall, eyes searching, and when she saw Jon she lift. At her chin, a silent question. Jon raised 2 fingers and pointed toward the inner keep. Move them. Now, quietly. Sansa nodded once, and Jon felt a tight knot in his chest ease. Not safety, only coordination. Arya remained beside him as the night dragged on. Snow crusted their cloaks. Ghost never stopped sniffing the wind. When the blackness finally began to thin toward dawn, Jon realized the dead had not come to breach the walls. They had come to look at him. And he could not shake the feeling that the crown on his head had been part of what they were measuring. By the time the first gray light seeped into Winterfell, Jon had ordered 3 rotations of watch and watched men's courage fray at the edges without breaking outright. That alone felt like a victory, thin as it was. He took the crown off only long enough to wash the ice from his hair and scrape sleep from his eyes. When he put it back on, it felt less like choice and more like fastening armor. The steel was cold, but it steadied him. Or perhaps it merely forced him to stand straighter so others could borrow strength from his spine. The solar was crowded, and the air smelled of wet wool and candle wax and smoke. Maps were spread across the table, rough, stained, marked with charcoal lines and little piles of pebbles that stood in for men. The north was too wide to fit on parchment honestly, but they tried anyway because trying was what men did when they could not hold the whole world in their heads. Sansa stood with both hands on the table, fingers splayed as if she might crush the map flat through sheer will. Arya hovered on the far side, still as a knife in a sheath. Davos paced in a small circle near the hearth, restless. Tormund lounged against the wall like a bear pretending not to care, but his eyes tracked every word. Lord Wyman Manderley had come, jowls trembling when he breathed, face set in a grim look that did not suit him as well as false cheer. 2 captains from lesser houses stood behind him, their boots leaving puddles on stone as melted snow ran off. Jon placed a pebble at Winterfell. They were at the treeline, he said, voice steady. Close enough to see, close enough to test our nerve. Manderley's eyes widened. At the treeline? He repeated, as if the words themselves carried frost. How many? I couldn't count, Jon admitted. He hated admitting weakness. Kings did not like not knowing. More than one, less than an army. They didn't attack. Yet, Sansa said, and the word hit like a hammer. Davos stopped pacing. If they're that close, he said, then the villages are in danger. Shiver Ford, the farms, any holdfast with a low wall. Jon nodded. We send scouts at once, he said, and we proceed with the trap. Sansa's eyes flashed. The trap was meant for a man with coin, she said, not for the dead. Jon met her gaze. The dead don't care about our plans, he said, but the man with coin might. If he comes, we can cut out a knife aimed at our back before it sinks in. Arya's mouth curved, grim. And if the dead come too, she said, then we kill 2 problems. Sansa looked at Arya sharply. You're not going, she said. Arya's eyes narrowed. I'm already going, she replied, as if the argument had already been decided in her head. Jon lifted a hand. Arya, he said. Arya's gaze snapped to him. The moment held siblings and knives and old loyalties. Jon spoke carefully. You are useful, he said, which means you don't get to die because you're bored. Arya's nostrils flared. I'm not bored, she said, and the lie was thin. I'm angry. Sansa's voice was tight. Angry doesn't keep you alive. Arya took a step toward Sansa, face hard. Neither does sitting in a room counting grain, she snapped. Sansa's jaw clenched. "You think I haven't bled?" she hissed. "You think I don't know what knives feel like?" The air in the solar tightened. Davos looked as if he might speak, then stopped, choosing silence over adding oil. Jon's fingers pressed into the map. He felt the crown's cold at his brow like a warning. A king cannot let family become fracture. "We do this together," Jon said, voice low. The room stilled. Arya goes, but not alone. She takes 2 men she trusts. Wildlings if she wants. Men who won't be bought with southern gold. She brings proof back. If the dead are near Shiver Ford, she leaves immediately. No heroics. Arya's mouth tightened, but she nodded once, reluctant. "Fine," she said. 2. Tormund pushed off the wall, grinning. "Take some of mine," he offered. "Free folk don't care for Lannister gold. It tastes like shit." Manderly cleared his throat, uneasy. "Your Grace," he said, and Jon still heard the faint strain of accepting the title. "If there's a traitor among the lords, we must be careful. Accuse the wrong man and you'll turn half the north against you." Jon nodded. "That's why we need truth," he said. "Not rumor, not suspicion. Proof." Sansa stabbed her dagger tip into the map near Shiver Ford. "If the dead are that close," she said, voice clipped, "then the people there are already in danger. We should evacuate them now." Davos's eyes softened. "Evacuation takes time," he said. "Time we might not have." "Then we make it," Sansa snapped. Jon stared at the map. Shiver Ford was a dot on parchment, meaningless and small, yet it held a hamlet full of children who had names and mothers who sang them to sleep. He could picture it. The crooked houses, smoke from chimneys, a frozen river shallow enough to cross. He placed a second pebble on Shiver Ford. "Send riders," he ordered. "Quietly, tell them to bring everyone back to Winterfell. Anyone who refuses, leave guards to push them if you must." Manderly swallowed. "That will empty the countryside," he said. "It will keep them alive," Jon replied. Davos nodded once, approval and worry tangled. "And the trap?" he asked. Jon looked at Arya. "You leave within the hour," he said. "You deliver the message and you wait. If he comes, you take him. If he doesn't, you return before dusk. No matter what." Arya's eyes gleamed. "Ready." "I'll take him," she said. Sansa's gaze flicked to Jon's crown, then to Jon's face. "You'll stay here," she said, not asking. "You can't be everywhere." Jon felt the itch to argue. He wanted to ride out, to put steel between himself and danger, to do something he understood. He hated waiting behind walls while others risked themselves. But kings were not allowed the comfort of doing what felt right if it left their people leaderless. Jon nodded once. "I stay," he said, and the admission tasted bitter. Tormund clapped his hands together, loud in the tense room. "Good," he boomed. "Let the little wolf hunt the fat snake. I'll go piss in the snow and tell my men to get ready." He left, chuckling, as if none of this mattered. Davos leaned closer to Jon, voice low. "Your Grace," he said. "You did well on the wall. Men saw you not panic. That's worth more than arrows." Jon stared at the map, at the pebbles that stood in for lives. "They're going to panic anyway," he murmured. Davos's eyes were tired. "Then they'll need you not to," he said. Sansa gathered the letters sealed for other houses, her movements sharp. "I'll handle the evacuation orders," she said. "And the court today. We need to show them you're not only a crown and a sword. You're law." Jon's stomach tightened. Law meant judgment. Judgment meant choosing who suffered so others might survive. Arya slipped toward the door, already pulling her hood up. She paused only long enough to look at Jon. "Try not to get stabbed while I'm gone," she said. Jon's mouth twitched. "I'll do my best," he replied. Arya's smile was brief and knife-thin. Then she was gone. When the solar quieted, Jon realized his hands had been clenched. He forced them to open. Outside, Winterfell stirred under gray dawn. Snow fell softer now, almost peaceful, as if the world was trying to pretend it was still only winter, and not something worse wearing winter's skin. Jon stood over the map and felt the crown's cold settle deeper. He had declared himself king to unite the North against the dead. Now the dead were at his treeline, and human knives were already in his house. The barn smelled of old piss and rot and hay that had gone sour under too many winters. Its roof had half caved in years ago, leaving a jagged gap where snow sifted down in a constant whisper. The world outside was a pale smear of darkness and gray, the hour when night and dawn wrestled and neither won cleanly. Arya Stark lay on her belly in the hayloft, chin resting on her forearm, eyes fixed on the door below. The splinters in the wooden beam beneath her were sharp enough to draw blood, but she barely felt them. Her body had learned to become whatever the moment required: stone, shadow, knife. Beside her, crouched like wolves, were two free folk scouts Tormund had sent. One was a woman with hair braided tight and a face carved by wind. The other was a lean man with a scar that pulled one side of his mouth into a permanent sneer. Neither wore any sigil. Neither would kneel. Below, in the dim, a figure waited near the center of the barn. Hood up, shoulders hunched, posture sloppy on purpose. The assassin's cloak had been stolen from the man ghost had bitten. The face beneath the hood was not the assassin's, because Arya had no taste for wearing dead skin unless she had to. But she had practiced the posture, the breathing, the way fear made a man move. The decoy was one of Davos's trusted runners, a small northern man with hands that shook convincingly even when he tried to still them. Arya had told him what to say and how to say it. Mostly, "If you forget," she had whispered before leaving Winterfell, "I'll cut you." He had not laughed. Now the barn waited, holding its breath. Snow hissed through the roof gap. Somewhere in the distance, a raven croaked, then fell silent, as if it had remembered the world had teeth. Then came footsteps in the snow outside, slow, careful, not rushed like a man afraid of being seen, but measured like a man certain the world would make room for him. Arya's fingers tightened around Needle's hilt. The blade was hidden beneath her forearm, but she could feel it as clearly as her own pulse. The barn door creaked open. A lantern bobbed in, painting trembling gold across the hay and beams. Behind it stepped a man in a fur-trimmed cloak, boots clean enough to offend, as if he had not walked the same roads everyone else trudged. He held the lantern in one hand and a heavy leather purse in the other. Its weight pulled his arm slightly, making the coins inside clink softly like a whisper of greed. On his cloak, pinned near his collar, gleamed a silver wolf's head. The man's gloves were fine leather, too fine for the North. His beard was neat. His hair was dark. Arya's eyes slid to his right hand as he lifted the lantern. There was a scar along the knuckles, pale and shiny, like a burn. He paused just inside the doorway, scanning the barn. His eyes did not dart like a frightened man's. They moved like a man counting exits. "Is it done?" he called, voice low. The decoy shifted, letting his shoulders slump as if exhausted. He said, forcing roughness into his tone. "It's done." The wolfpin man stepped closer, lantern raising. The light fell across the decoy's hood, catching the edge of his jaw. The decoy kept his face turned away, as Arya had instructed. "You have the crown?" the man asked. The decoy hesitated, just long enough to be believable. "Not on me," he said. "I took it off him." The man's eyes narrowed. "Where is it?" "In snow," the decoy said, voice trembling on purpose. "Hidden. I'm not a fool." The man's mouth tightened. "You were paid to be a fool," he said quietly. The decoy swallowed audibly. "I was paid to take it," he said, and Arya heard the fear in his voice sharpen into real panic. The man with the wolf pin took another step. "Show me," he said. The decoy shifted his hands as if reaching into his cloak. Arya's muscles coiled. Now she thought. Now. But the man did not wait. He moved suddenly. Fast. Too fast for someone so heavy in cloak and gloves. His hand snapped out, not toward the decoy's throat, but toward the decoy's wrist, catching it, twisting. A knife flashed in the lantern light. Small, sharp, hidden in the man's sleeve. Not a lord, Arya realized. Not only a buyer, Another blade. The decoy cried out, pain genuine now. The knife pressed toward his palm. "Tell me where it is," the man hissed. Arya dropped from the hayloft like falling darkness. She landed behind the wolfpin man with barely a sound, knees bending to absorb the impact. Her knife flashed, the blade pressing against the soft gap beneath his jaw. She breathed into his ear. "Let him go," Arya whispered. The man froze. For a heartbeat, the barn was perfectly still except for the snow hissing through the roof. The wolfpin man's breath came out slow. "You're not him," he murmured. Arya's smile was invisible in the dark, but her voice carried it. "No," she said. "I'm worse." The man's eyes flicked toward the hayloft, toward the shadows where the Free Folk scouts crouched with arrows ready. He understood the trap. He was not stupid. He relaxed his grip on the decoy's wrist, letting him stumble back, clutching his hand. "Lady Arya Stark," the man said softly, as if tasting the name. "So the little wolf has teeth." Arya's knife pressed a fraction deeper. "And you're wearing his face," she said. "A wolf pin doesn't make you a wolf." The man's mouth twitched. "No," he agreed, "but it makes men listen." Behind him, the Free Folk woman rose from the hayloft's edge, bow drawn. "Say the word," she murmured, voice thick with contempt, "and I'll put an arrow through his eye." Arya kept her knife steady. "Not yet," she said. She wanted him alive. Alive men talked. Dead men only bled. The wolfpin man lifted his hands slowly, lantern wobbling. "Careful," he said. "If you kill me, you learn nothing." Arya's eyes narrowed. "If I don't," she said, "you might still die." His breath hitched. "Coin was offered," he said quickly. "Coin and titles. Men do straw. NG things when they think the world is ending." Arya hissed, impatient. "Who offered?" she demanded. The man swallowed. His eyes flicked, calculating. "A woman in the south," he said, voice tight. "A queen who thinks the north belongs to her because she sits on metal." The decoy, trembling, whispered, "Cersei." Arya's knife shifted slightly. "Names," she said. "I want names. And I want the man who brought you north." The wolfpin man's eyes widened a fraction. "I brought myself," he said, "because someone had to make sure the job was done." Arya's mouth tightened. "You're the intermediary," she said, understanding. "You're the one who hired the assassin." He did not deny it. Outside, the wind shifted. For a heartbeat, the air tasted like metal. The Free Folk man in the hayloft stiffened. "Arya Stark," he whispered urgently, eyes on the crack between boards. "Look." Arya's gaze flicked toward the barn's broken wall. Between the slats, faint blue lights glimmered in the treeline, distant but unmistakable. The wolfpin man saw it too, his face drained. "What is that?" he breathed. Arya's throat went tight. The dead were near, too near. "You brought this meeting to the edge of death," she snarled at him. He shook his head, panicked. "No," he whispered. "That wasn't. This was supposed to be." A thump sounded outside. Heavy. Wrong. Another thump. Then a scraping like nails on frozen wood. The barn door shuddered once. Then it slammed inward with a crack. A body stumbled through, human-shaped but not human. Its skin was gray and stiff, eyes burning blue. Snow clung to it like ash. Behind it, another pushed, then another, a slow flood of dead flesh forcing its way into the barn. The wolfpin man screamed and threw his lantern. It shattered on the floor, flame licking up hay, fire and ice, panic and inevitability. Arya moved without thinking. She shoved the wolfpin man toward the Free Folk woman. "Take him," she snapped. "Tie him. If he runs, break his legs." The woman grabbed the man's cloak, yanking him back as he tried to bolt. Arya dropped to the barn floor, needle flashing. The first wight lunged, fingers like frozen hooks. Arya ducked under its grasp and drove needle up beneath its ribs. But steel did nothing. The wight barely flinched. "Dragon glass," Arya shouted. The Free Folk man tossed her a short black dagger. Obsidian, sharp and ugly. Arya caught it and, as the wight swung again, she rammed the dragon glass into its throat. The wight collapsed like cut strings, blue light fading. More poured in. The decoy screamed and stumbled back. One wight seized him, teeth snapping at his face. Arya lunged, burying dragonglass in its skull. The dead thing fell, taking the decoy down with it. He scrabbled free, sobbing, eyes wild. The barn's hay caught fire, flame racing along dry strands. Smoke thickened. Snow sifted down through the broken roof and hissed on burning wood, making the air taste like wet ash. Arya's world narrowed to movement. Hands, teeth, blue eyes, the glint of obsidian. She had fought men, and men had fear and hesitation. These things had only hunger. She killed 2, 3, for each time driving dragonglass into the place where life used to live. The Free Folk scouts fought beside her with brutal efficiency, axes and obsidian shards. The Wolfpin man clawed at his bindings, screaming prayers useless. Then the air changed again, colder, cleaner, as if the world inhaled. All the wights froze for a heartbeat, heads tilting in unison toward the broken wall. Outside, through smoke and snow, a tall shape stood among the trees. Pale armor, a face like carved ice, blue eyes watching. The White Walker did not step closer. It simply observed the chaos it had caused, patient as winter. Arya felt a chill crawl up her spine that had nothing to do with cold. The Free Folk woman saw it too and whispered, voice shaking despite herself, "Gods!" Arya did not pray. She grabbed the Wolfpin man by his cloak, yanking him toward the barn's back exit. "Move!" she snarled. The man stumbled, sobbing, eyes locked on the pale figure outside. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he choked. "It never is," Arya hissed. They fled into the snow as the barn burned behind them. The wights, some still moving, some collapsing, staggered after them, drawn by sound and heat. Arya stabbed and ran, dragging the Wolfpin man when he fell. Behind them, the White Walker remained at the treeline, watching them go. Not chasing, learning. And as Arya ran through the gray dawn with a traitor in her grip and dead things at her back, she realized with a cold certainty that the enemy was not only coming south, it was getting smarter. When the hall filled for court, Jon felt the same sickness he used to feel before battle, an awareness that something irreversible was about to happen, and that afterward the world would be narrower. The high seat looked different with the crown on his head. It was the same carved wood and stark stone behind it, the same banners drooping in winter damp. Yet now every eye that lifted to him did not see a man first. They saw a symbol. They searched the symbol for mercy or cruelty the way hungry people searched a pot for meat. Sansa stood beside him, chin lifted, expression controlled. She had dressed him for this without saying she had, making sure his cloak fell right, making sure the crown sat centered. A king who looked uncertain invited challenge. A king who looked cruel invited knives. Sansa walked between those blades as if she had been born balancing on them. Davos stood below the dais, hands clasped behind his back, his face troubled in a quiet way. He did not like courts. Davos liked ships and storms because storms were honest. Men were not. The steward was brought forward by guards, knees buckling. He was an older man with a gray beard and trembling hands, his mouth working soundlessly as if he had forgotten how to form words. Behind him, 2 villagers stood thin, hollow-eyed, clutching each other's sleeves. Their cheeks were pinched by cold. They looked at the steward with fury. The guard captain spoke. "This man was found with sacks of grain hidden beneath his floor," he said. "More than his house could need." He refused to share while others in Wintertown went hungry. A murmur rose, angry, desperate. The steward's eyes fixed on Jon's crown like a drowning man staring at a rope. "Your Grace," he croaked. "Aye, please." Jon's stomach tightened. Grain. In winter, grain was life. Hoarding grain was murder done slowly. "Why?" Jon asked simply. The steward's eyes darted, searching for a lie that might save him. "For my family," he whispered. For my grandchildren. I thought, if the dead come, if the lords take everything. The lords take to feed the living, Sansa said sharply. The steward flinched. They take because they can, he blurted, then seemed horrified by his own words. He dropped his gaze to the floor. I was afraid. Jon stared down at him. He understood fear. He had lived in it. He had died in it. He understood the animal instinct to clutch life close and not share it with strangers. He also understood that fear unchecked turned men into wolves devouring their own. Your fear-starved children, Jon said. A woman in the crowd cried out, voice breaking. My boy hasn't eaten in 2 days, she shouted. 2 days. The steward's shoulders shook. I didn't know, he sobbed. I thought. You knew? Sansa cut in, voice cold. You knew because you hid it. The hall hummed with anger. Jon could feel it rising like heat, and he could feel how easily that heat could become a mob if he mishandled it. Kings were not only judges. They were dam walls. Jon's fingers tightened on the armrest. The crown's cold pressed into his skin as if urging him toward hardness. The old way in the north was simple. A man who stole life paid with his own. A sword swing in the yard. Clean, final, satisfying. Jon looked at the steward and saw a man who deserved punishment. He also saw a castle full of people who would become the steward if hunger kept tightening. If he killed this man and called it justice, it might satisfy rage for a day. It would not fill bellies. Jon leaned forward slightly. You will return every sack, he said. The steward looked up, eyes wide with desperate hope. Yes, he whispered. Yes, your grace. Jon's voice did not soften. You will return double, he continued, to the families who went hungry. The steward's mouth opened, terror replacing hope. Double? He rasped. I can't. You can, Jon said, because I will take what you cannot give from your house and lands. Your servants will deliver it. Your account books will be opened. Your stores will be watched. The steward shook his head wildly. You'll ruin me, he sobbed. Jon's eyes were iron. You ruined others first, he said. The villagers watched, breathing hard, as if afraid the steward might still slip away. Jon's voice grew colder. You will also give hostages, he said, and the word made the room tighten. Your eldest son and your daughter will remain in Winterfell until the debt is paid and the stores have been fairly counted for 3 moons. The steward's sob turned into a choked sound of horror. No, he pleaded. Please. Sansa's gaze flicked to Jon, surprised, then approving, because hostages were language lords understood. It was not blood, but it was leverage. Davos's eyes tightened with discomfort. He hated hostages, hated what they represented, but he did not interrupt. Jon looked at the steward a long moment, then added the last blade. And you will stand in the yard at dusk, Jon said, voice ringing in the hall. You will tell Wintertown what you did. You will ask forgiveness. And you will swear an oath before the heart tree that you will not hoard again. If you break it, then I will take your head. The steward sagged, broken, as if death would have been simpler. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some disappointed that there would be no execution, others relieved, others impressed by the harshness without blood. Jon felt no triumph, only fatigue. Remove him, Jon ordered. As the guards hauled the steward away, Sansa leaned closer, voice low. That was clever, she murmured. Jon stared at the crowd. It was necessary, he said. Sansa's eyes remained hard. Necessary is what kings do, she replied. The next petition came, a dispute over horses. The one after that, a soldier accused of striking a villager. The hall became a river of grievances, each one small compared to the dead, yet each one part of the same war. Hunger wars, fear wars, wars that kill. People long before swords did. Jon listened until his ears rang and his skull throbbed. He spoke judgments, each one a stone placed into the dam. All the while, he watched the doors, half expecting another assassin to slip through, and he felt the crown's cold reminding him that he had chosen this. Chosen to become the thing people would blame when the world fell apart. When the court finally thinned, Jon's gaze drifted to the far end of the hall where snowlight seeped through the cracks in the doors. He imagined blue eyes in that light. He wondered where Arya was, and whether she was already bleeding in the snow. King's Landing did not know winter the way the North did. It knew damp cold that seeped into stone and made joints ache, and it knew winds that carried the stink of the sea and the city's own rot. But it did not know the kind of cold that emptied the world of color. Cersei Lannister stood in a chamber lit by candles that burned too cleanly, their flames steady behind glass. Maps covered the table, their edges weighted with small golden lions. Raven scrolls lay strewn like discarded skins. Her hand held one letter with a direwolf seal. The wax had cracked under her nails. She read it once, and her mouth curved. Not a smile, a sharpening. Qyburn stood at her side, hands folded, his pale eyes attentive in that way that always felt like a probe. Behind Cersei, the mountain stood like a door made of meat and armor, silent and unmoving. Near the window, Euron Greyjoy leaned against stone as if he owned it, his grin a lazy insult. Cersei crumpled the direwolf letter slowly. "He calls himself king," she said, voice soft.
Euron Tiaklet.
"Northmen love their little games," he said. "Give them a crown and they howl." Cersei's gaze flicked to him, sharp enough to cut. "This is not a game," she said. "It is an opportunity." Qyburn inclined his head. "Indeed," he murmured. "Jon Snow's declaration will disturb the balance. It will split the North," Cersei said. She dropped the crumpled letter onto the map. "Some will follow him out of fear of the dead. Some will resent him. Some will see a chance to rise if he falls. And you'll help them," Euron said, amusement curling. "Lovely." Cersei's fingers traced the map's northern edge as if she could feel snow through parchment. "A crowned man in Winterfell," she said, "and a dragon queen on Dragonstone. 2 claims, 2 prides, 2 fires that will burn each other." Qyburn's eyes gleamed faintly. "If we fan the flames carefully," he agreed. Cersei turned, skirts whispering. "The assassin you sent," she said. Qyburn lowered his gaze slightly. "A contract was arranged through intermediaries," he said. "Discreetly." "Discreetly," Cersei echoed, and the words sounded like mockery. "And yet I am told Winterfell caught the knife." Qyburn's face remained smooth. "It appears the wolf has sharper teeth than expected," he said. "The girl, Arya Stark, has returned to Winterfell."
Euroness Green Videnet.
"Oh, I've heard stories," he said. "The little killer makes men piss themselves." Cersei's eyes narrowed. "She will die," Cersei said, and it was not a promise for later. It was an inevitability spoken aloud. Qyburn lifted a second parchment. "There is more," he said. "Reports suggest Jon Snow wears a crown of Valyrian steel."
Euron Vistlet.
"Pretty," he said. "I take it. Sell it. Drink from it." Cersei's gaze sharpened. "Valyrian steel," she repeated. Something shifted behind her eyes. Memory, perhaps, of old stories told in Lannister halls about dragons and doom. How did a bastard in the North find such a thing? Qyburn's smile was thin. "Old secrets," he said. "Winterfell keeps many." Cersei's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. "Find out," she ordered. "Find out who made it, who hid it, and what it means. If Jon Snow has Valyrian steel, then perhaps he has more than a crown. Perhaps he has a claim."
Euron Laughead.
"You're afraid he's a dragon," he said. "What a delightful thought. A wolf wearing dragon skin." Cersei's eyes flashed. "I fear nothing," she snapped, then forced her voice back into calm. "But I do not like surprises." Qyburn bowed his head. "My little birds are already moving," he said softly. "In the north and on Dragonstone. Rumors have roots. We will pull them." Cersei's gaze drifted to the window, to the city beyond, roof tiles and smoke and people who did not know how close the world was to ending. "Send more gold," she said. "To the north. To any lord who feels slighted by Jon Snow's crown, promise them titles, promise them warmth, promise them the world. And when they ask what you want in return, Qyburn asked. Cersei's mouth curved again. Their obedience, she said. Their knives, their oaths. She paused, then added quieter. And their fear. Euron pushed off the window, swaggering closer. If you want a crown stolen, he said, my men can take it, quietly, or not. His grin gleamed. I rather enjoy not. Cersei looked at him as one might look at a dog that had learned to speak. Your men cannot sail into Winterfell's crypts, she said, and they cannot fight the dead. Euron's grin faltered slightly, insulted. My men can fight anything, he boasted. Cersei's eyes turned cold. Then you will fight for me, she said. When I tell you. Until then, keep your fleet ready. There may come a moment when the Dragon Queen flies north, and I will need you to bite at her heels. Euron's grin returned, sharp. Anything for my queen, he purred. Behind Cersei, the mountain breathed slowly, armor creaking. A reminder that monsters could be controlled if you held their leash. Cersei turned back to Qyburn. And the one thing we must do, she said softly, is ensure Jon Snow's crown does not become a rallying cry. Qyburn's eyes flicked up. You wish for his death, he said. Cersei's fingers traced the crushed direwolf seal. I wish for his story to die, she corrected. Men will die for stories. If I can kill the story, the man becomes only flesh. Qyburn smiled, almost pleased. Then we shall poison the story, he said. Whisper that Jon Snow is not Stark enough. Whisper that he is Southern. Whisper that he is a pretender. Whisper, he paused, that he is something worse. Cersei's gaze sharpened. Something worse, she repeated. She liked the sound. Outside, the city roared with life. Inside, Cersei Lannister made plans to ensure it did not have to learn Winter's language until it was too late. She crushed the direwolf letter one last time, letting the wax crumble like dried blood, and smiled as if she would already see the north tearing itself apart. The snow swallowed sound, but it could not swallow the screams. Arya ran until her lungs burned and her legs felt like they were filled with broken glass. The rope in her hand bit into her palm. At the other end, the wolfpin man stumbled and fell, then was dragged, then clawed his way up again, sobbing and choking on cold air. He had stopped trying to fight. Fear had turned him into dead weight. Behind them, the barn crackled as it burned, flames licking through broken boards, smoke rolling into the gray dawn like a dirty banner. The smell of burning hay was thick and sweet and wrong. Wights crashed through the snow in awkward bursts, their bodies stiff, their mouths open in soundless hunger. They did not tire. They did not slow. They fell and rose again unless dragonglass found the right place. The Free Folk Scouts moved with brutal efficiency. The woman swung her axe, chopping at knees and elbows not to kill. Steel could not kill them, but to slow them. The man with the scar drove obsidian into skulls and throats, each strike quick and practiced as if he had been born knowing where monsters kept their life. Arya was no stranger to monsters. She had worn faces. She had killed men who begged and men who laughed. She had watched death take forms that did not fit any story. Yet there was something about the dead in the north that scraped at her skin. The way they moved like puppets. The way their blue eyes held no hatred, only hunger. A wight lunged out of a drift, arms outstretched. Arya ducked, slid, and slammed dragonglass up into its jaw. The wight collapsed. Arya did not look back to see if it stayed down. She could not afford to. The wolfpin man tripped again, falling face first into snow. He screamed as Arya yanked him upright. Please, he gasped, eyes wild. Please don't. Run, Arya snarled. Or die. Pick one. He stumbled onward, sobbing. Behind them, the free folk woman shouted, voice hoarse. More. Arya glanced back and saw it 3, 4, 5 wights emerging from between trees, their movement faster now, as if the hunt had tightened. One wore a torn cloak with a familiar pattern. A villager, Someone who had been alive yesterday. Arya's teeth clenched. "Keep moving," she shouted, and her voice came out rough, almost a growl. They reached a narrow frozen stream, Shiver Ford's edge, where the ice was thin near the reeds. Arya's boots slid, but she kept her footing, dragging the wolf-pin man over. He nearly fell through, cracking the surface. Arya jerked him up, furious. The free folk man crossed last, turning to stab a wight that lunged at his back. Dragonglass sank, blue eyes went dark, and the corpse collapsed into the stream with a splash that froze nearly instantly. They kept running, angling toward the open land that led back to Winterfell, where the trees thinned and the sky widened. Arya's breath came in painful bursts. Frost formed on her lashes. Blood, hers and not hers, flecked her cheeks. Then the air shifted, colder, cleaner. It hit Arya like stepping into a shadow that had weight. She turned her head, and through the trees she saw it again. The White Walker. It stood where the treeline thickened, pale armor catching faint dawn like ice catching moonlight. Its face was smooth and wrong, its eyes two cold stars. It did not run. It did not lift a weapon. It simply watched, as if it was counting, as if it was memorizing how Arya moved, how she fought, how she chose. Fear slid into Arya's chest like a knife. Not fear of dying. She had made peace with that long ago. But fear of losing. Fear of the world turning into a place where nothing she did mattered. She met the White Walker's gaze for a heartbeat. Then she turned away, because staring at death did not stop it. The wolf-pin man babbled through sobs. "It's real," he gasped. "The dead gods." Arya yanked the rope hard enough to choke him. "Shut up," she hissed. "Save your breath for talking later." The free folk woman's face was streaked with soot and sweat. "We can't outrun them forever," she shouted. Arya's mind raced. Winterfell was miles away. The wights were close. The traitor was slowing them. She could cut his throat and run faster. No, alive men talked. Arya's jaw clenched. She grabbed the wolf-pin man's collar and shoved him into the arms of the scarred free folk man. "Carry him," she snapped. The man grunted and hoisted the traitor like a sack of grain, rope still tied around his wrists. Arya turned, facing the wights crashing through the trees behind them. She planted her feet in the snow and drew needle in one hand and dragonglass in the other. The first wight lunged. Arya stabbed with dragonglass, then sliced with needle out of habit, the steel doing nothing except cutting frozen flesh. The wight fell. Another came. Arya pivoted, drove obsidian into its eye, and felt the blue light die like a snuffed candle. The free folk woman joined her, axe swinging. Together they carved a path of still corpses, buying seconds. Seconds were lives. Arya's arms burned. Her fingers went numb. She could taste smoke from the burning barn on the wind, mixed with that sharp metallic cold that belonged to the dead. Finally, the free folk man shouted, "Now!" And Arya broke from the fight, sprinting after them. They ran until the trees thinned and the land opened into rolling white. Behind them, the wights slowed, not because they tired, but because something had called them back. An unseen leash pulled by cold hands. Arya glanced back once, heart hammering. The White Walker was gone, or hidden. Either was worse. They reached a small rise where Winterfell's distant towers could be seen like dark teeth against the sky. Arya's chest ached. She felt older than she should, carrying a war in her bones. The wolf-pin man hung limp in the free folk man's arms, sobbing quietly. His silver wolf pin had been torn away in the struggle and now lay somewhere in the snow, lost. Good, Arya thought. Let him be nameless when he begs. As they trudged onward, Arya's mind replayed the White Walker's stillness, the way it had watched and not chased, the way the wights had moved like a hunting pack, not a mindless swarm. Jon Snow had put a crown on his head to fight monsters, but the monsters were learning, and Arya could not shake the feeling that the crown was not the only thing that had drawn their gaze. Arya returned to Winterfell with smoke in her hair and frost on her lashes. The guards at the gate almost did not recognize her in the gray dawn. She slipped past them like she had always belonged to shadows, and then she was in the yard, dragging the remnants of chaos behind her. 2 free folk scouts, one limping, and a bound man carried like dead weight, his cloak torn, his face streaked with tears and soot. Jon met them at the steps with Sansa and Davos, the crown cold on his brow. He had been waiting, pretending he was not, the way men pretended they did not watch the horizon when they loved someone who was far away. When he saw Arya alive, something unclenched inside him so sharply it almost hurt. Then he saw the bound man, and his jaw tightened again. Arya dropped a heavy purse onto the stone. It hit with a satisfying clink. "South gold," she said, voice rough. She reached into her cloak and threw a handful of coins onto the steps. They rolled and caught the light. Bright, clean, stamped with a lion. Sansa's face hardened into something like hatred made elegant. "Cersei," she whispered. Arya nodded once. "And his man," she said, kicking the bound intermediary's boot. "Not a lord, not even brave." The man flinched, eyes wide, lips trembling. Jon's gaze was flat. "Bring him inside," he ordered. They took him to the solar, because it was close and because Jon was not willing to let the prisoner be paraded through halls where any watching eye might count his face and decide whether to rescue him or silence him. In the solar, with torches burning and the fire low, Arya spilled the purse's contents onto the table. Gold coins clattered like teeth. Mixed among them were smaller silver pieces, payments, bribes, the language of betrayal. She tossed down a wolf pin too, not the man's original one, but another she had ripped from his cloak lining when she dragged him through the burning barn. It was plain silver, stamped with a Stark wolf that looked slightly wrong, the snout too long, the eyes too sharp. Forgery. A mask. Sansa touched it with 2 fingers as if it might stain her. "He used us," she said softly. The prisoner's chair scraped as he tried to shrink. "I didn't," he began, voice cracking. Arya leaned in, knife appearing in her hand as if the air had produced it. "You did," she said. "Start again, but this time tell the truth." Jon watched the prisoner, feeling the crown's cold remind him that fear was a tool. He hated needing it. "What is your name?" Jon asked. The man swallowed. Hob," he whispered. "Hob, son of no one." Arya snorted. "Convenient." Davos's eyes were tired. "Hob," he said gently. "If you want to live, you'll answer. If you lie, she'll cut you and I won't stop her. If you tell the truth, perhaps the king." He stumbled slightly on the title. "Will show mercy." Hobb's eyes flicked to Jon's crown, then away. "I don't want to die," he whispered. "Then talk," Jon said. Hobb's words spilled out in panicked clumps. He had been a courier once, running messages between merchants along the King's Road. He had learned who paid and who didn't. He had learned that men with nice gloves could buy anything if they smiled the right way. When winter came and coin got scarce, he had taken work from a southern man who did not give his name and did not smile. "He said the north would fall," Hob babbled. "Dead or dragons," he said. "He said the smart ones would choose a side early. He said if Jon Snow makes himself king, there'll be chaos." "He said." "Who?" Sansa snapped. "Who said it?" Hob swallowed hard. "He called himself a friend of the north," he said. "He wore northern furs, but his boots were too clean. He had a scar on his hand." Jon's gaze sharpened. "The same scar?" he asked. Hob nodded frantically. Yes. He told me to wear the wolf pin to look like I belonged. He said the queen would pay to remove the crown. He said we'd weaken the north so the dragon queen couldn't use it." His voice rose. "He said it was mercy, that if we stopped Jon Snow now, we'd avoid a war." Arya's knife tip pressed against Hobb's cheek, not cutting, only promising. "War is already here," she whispered. "I fought dead men in the snow because of your meeting." Hobb's eyes went glassy with terror. "Dead men?" he whimpered. Arya's voice turned cold. "Blue eyes," she said. "Cold skin. Nobres. You ever seen that? You want to?" Hob shook his head wildly, sobbing. Jon's stomach tightened. "The dead were near?" he asked Arya. Arya's gaze flicked to Jon, a flicker of something like respect because he asked the right question first. Near enough, she said. They came to the barn. Wights. And a White Walker watched. Sansa went very still. A White Walker, she repeated, voice brittle. Arya nodded. It didn't fight, she said. It watched. Davos exhaled slowly, face paling. That's not good, he murmured. Jon stared at the gold coins on the table. He imagined Cersei's fingers on them. He imagined Qyburn's pale eyes. He imagined a southern queen smiling at the thought of the north tearing itself apart before the dead even arrived. Jon looked at Hobb. Where is the man with the scar now? He asked. Hobb's sobbing slowed as he tried to think. He didn't come with me to Winterfell, Hobb whispered. He stayed in Wintertown. He has rooms there. He meets with... Hobb's eyes darted, fear sharpening into calculation. He meets with a lord sometimes. A northern lord. Sansa's eyes narrowed. Which lord? Hobb swallowed. I didn't see his face, he whispered. He kept his hood up. But I saw the sigil on his ring when he paid. His breath hitched. A sunburst. Karstark, Jon thought, and his jaw tightened. House Karstark had reason to hate him. Reason to hate the Starks. Reason to hate any king who wasn't theirs. Sansa's face tightened. She had reached the same thought. Arya's knife hovered. If you're lying, she said softly, I'll know. Hobb shook his head frantically. I'm not, he pleaded. I swear on anything. Swear on your tongue, Arya said, and Hobb flinched. Jon leaned back slightly, forcing his mind into clarity. Karstark's, or a forged ring, or a planted lie meant to make him strike at the wrong house and fracture the north. Cersei would enjoy that. Qyburn would design it. Sansa's voice was tight. We can't arrest a lord on the word of a frightened courier, she said. Jon nodded. Not openly, he said. Arya's eyes gleamed. But we can watch, she said. Davos stepped closer to Jon, voice low. We can build a net, he murmured. Quietly, catch the fish when it swims. Jon stared at the coins again, then at the forged wolf pin. A fake wolf. A fake loyalty. A story designed to make the North eat itself. Jon looked at Hobb. You're going to help us, he said. Hobb's eyes widened. How? He whimpered. Jon's voice was flat. You're going back to Wintertown, he said. You're going to act like nothing happened. You're going to find the man with the scar and tell him the job failed. But the assassin escaped. You're going to tell him the crown is still in play. And you're going to bring us his next meeting. Hobb started shaking harder. He'll kill me, he whispered. Arya smiled thinly. If he tries, she said, I'll kill him first. Sansa's eyes narrowed at Arya, then returned to Jon. If we do this, she said, we do it carefully. If the lords suspect you're hunting traitors in their midst, you'll lose the trust you just built. Jon nodded. Then we hunt with shadows, he said. Ghost shifted in the corner, a low rumble in his chest. Jon glanced at the dire wolf and felt the same truth settle deeper. The dead were at the treeline, and now human knives were inside the walls. The war had already begun, and it was not only fought with swords. Jon looked at Arya. You did well, he said quietly. Arya's eyes flicked away, uncomfortable with praise. I didn't die, she said. That's all. Jon's mouth tightened. You saw a White Walker, he said. And you came back. Arya met his gaze then, and her eyes were bright in a way that made Jon's chest ache. It watched me, she said softly, like it was curious. The word frightened Jon more than any scream. Curious meant learning. And learning meant the dead were not only coming, they were adapting. Jon could not stay behind walls while the countryside went silent. Sansa argued, of course. She argued with the precision of a knife aimed at his ribs. You cannot ride out every time fear knocks, she said. You are king. If you die, the north fractures. Jon did not disagree. He only said, if I hide, the north fractures too. and he saw the anger in her eyes soften into helpless understanding. So he rode. He took a small party, enough to matter, not enough to be mistaken for an army. Torment came because refusing would have been like refusing a storm. A handful of free folk scouts moved like ghosts through the snow, their eyes always on the treeline. 2 northern rangers rode with Jon, faces grim and silent. Ghost ran ahead, white shape cutting through drifts, nose lifted, always testing the wind. The world beyond Winterfell's walls was quiet in a way that felt wrong. Snow covered old tracks, but it did not cover the absence of sound.
No words. No distant barking.
No smoke from chimneys. The north held its breath. They reached the hamlet near Shiver Ford by midday, the gray sun a weak coin behind cloud. Houses crouched under snow like hunched shoulders. Doors hung open, swinging slightly in the wind. A child's wooden horse lay half buried in a drift, its painted eyes staring at nothing. Jon dismounted, boots sinking. The crown's cold bit beneath his hood. He felt every man watching him, not for courage but for permission to be afraid. "Spread out," Jon ordered quietly.
No shouting.
Tormund sniffed the air like an animal. "Smells wrong," he muttered. Inside the nearest house, the air was stale and cold. A pot sat on the hearth, frozen stew inside it like brown stone. A blanket lay crumpled by the door as if someone had dropped it mid-step. Jon's stomach clenched. He stepped back outside and followed Ghost, who had stopped near the center of the hamlet, hackles raised. There, in the snow, was the circle. Not a footprint circle, not a wheel rut. A perfect ring of frost etched into the ground as if something colder than winter had touched it. The snow inside the ring looked slightly sunken, as if pressed. Jon crouched, gloved fingers hovering above it. The frost was not just cold. It was sharp, biting through leather. He pulled his hand back quickly, breath hissing. A free folk scout approached, eyes narrowed. "It's a mark," she said. Jon nodded. He had seen marks before. The dead left them like signatures. He stood and looked around. "Where are the bodies?" he asked. The answer came from one of the rangers, voice tight. "There," he said, pointing. Behind the last house, near the treeline, shapes lay in the snow. Jon's heart pounded as he walked toward them, each step heavy. Ghost padded at his heel, growling low. The bodies were arranged. Men, women, children, laid in a pattern that made Jon's stomach twist. Not piled like a massacre. Positioned like pieces on a board. Arms stretched outward.
Legs bent.
Faces turned up to the sky. A spiral. Jon's breath caught. He had seen spirals beyond the wall, messages meant for watchers, meant for fear. A language written in corpses. Tormund's face hardened. "They like their art," he spat. One of the children's eyes were open, glazed with frost. Snow had settled on the lashes like tiny white feathers. Jon felt anger rise, hot and dangerous, pushing against the crown's cold. He forced himself to kneel beside one of the men, checking the skin. The flesh was stiff, but there was no black rot. "Not yet. They died recently," Jon murmured. "Hours." The ranger swallowed. "Not by blade," he said.
No wounds.
Jon looked closer and found the sign. Faint blue staining at the lips, frost burned into skin around the mouth as if the breath had been stolen. The cold had killed them from inside. A free folk scout hissed, pointing toward the treeline. "Tracks," she said. Jon followed her gesture and saw it. Faint marks leading away from the bodies, not footprints so much as disturbances, as if something heavy had been dragged. Toward the trees. "Wights," Jon said. Ghost's growl deepened. Jon rose, turning slowly, scanning the woods. He did not see blue eyes immediately, but he felt them. The hairs on his neck lifted beneath his cloak. The crown's cold sharpened into something like pain. A sound came then, a soft creak, like ice shifting. Jon's hand went to Longclaw. Between 2 trees, a shape moved. A wight stepped out, then another. 3, 5, 10 silent, patient. Their eyes glowed blue, dim in the daylight but unmistakable. They did not charge. They stood and watched, as if repeating the same test they had performed at Winterfell's Treeline. Jon felt his men tense. A ranger whispered a prayer. The Free Folk scouts grinned like wolves about to bite. "Back!" Jon ordered quietly. "Slow." Tormund's eyes flashed. "We can take them," he muttered. Jon's voice was iron. "We don't fight here," he said. "We learn, and we live." The wights did not move as the living retreated. They simply watched, heads tilting slightly, as if curious. Curious, Jon thought, remembering Arya's word. He mounted his horse, heart hammering. Ghost ran at his side. The party withdrew, slow and controlled, refusing to give the dead the satisfaction of panic. Only when they were out of the hamlet and back on open snow did Jon allow himself to breathe fully again. He looked back once. The wights had not followed. They stood at the edge of the trees, a line of blue eyes in gray day, and behind them, just for a heartbeat, Jon thought he saw a taller pale shape among the trunks. Then snow shifted, and it was gone. Jon turned his horse toward Winterfell, jaw clenched. The dead were not simply marching. They were advancing like an army with purpose. Testing, marking, shaping fear. And he had a crown on his head that had already drawn one queen's knives and another queen's attention. He rode harder. The sea did not care that Daenerys Targaryen had called herself queen. It threw itself at her ship with the same hunger it showed every vessel that dared cross it. Waves rose like dark shoulders and crashed, spraying cold salt that stung the face and turned lips numb. The sky was a sheet of low gray, and the wind cut through cloaks as if it sought bare skin. Daenerys stood at the prow anyway, because storms did not frighten her the way small rooms did. Small rooms held whispers. Storms held only truth. Tyrion Lannister clung to a railing a few steps behind her, pale and grim, the sea trying to steal his stomach. He would never admit it, but Daenerys saw the strain in his jaw. Missandei stood close, fingers white on the rail, eyes wide as she watched the water. Grey Worm stood like a statue, unmoved by the ship's lurching, gaze fixed north as if his will could pull land closer. Above them, a shadow passed through cloud. Drogon. The dragon flew low over the sea, wings beating hard against wind, black scales slick with rain. His roar rolled across the water, deep enough to vibrate through wood. Sailors flinched, then steadied. They had learned to accept monsters as part of the queen's entourage. Daenerys held Jon Snow's letter folded inside her cloak, fingers touching it sometimes as if to remind herself it was real. She had read it again the night before they left Dragonstone, and each time the line "I will not kneel" had burned hotter. "You're thinking," Tyrion said hoarsely, voice strained by nausea and wind. Daenerys did not look back. "I'm always thinking," she said. Tyrion swallowed. "About him," he guessed. Daenerys's mouth tightened. "About what he represents," she corrected. Tyrion's breath puffed white. "A stubborn northern king?" he offered, half joke, half warning. Daenerys's eyes narrowed at the horizon. "A man who takes a crown without asking me," she said. "A man who believes himself righteous enough to tell a queen what he will not do." Tyrion's voice was careful. "Or a man who believes he must stand firm so his people don't fall apart," he said. "Stubbornness can be strategy." Daenerys's fingers tightened on the letter. "And if it is strategy," she said, "then I will not be manipulated by it." Tyrion's eyes flicked to her, tired. "Your Grace," he said quietly, "I am not asking you to kneel. I am asking you to consider that the North has its own pride and its own scars. If you demand submission first, you may get it, but you may also lose what you need most." Daenerys turned her head then, eyes sharp. "And what is that?" she demanded. Tyrion spread his hands, and even his exhaustion could not dull the sincerity in his voice. "Unity," he said. "If the dead are real, then every crown is worthless if the living can't stand together." Daenerys looked away again, lips pressed tight. She thought of Meereen, of freedmen arguing among themselves while enemies gathered. She thought of how easily ideals fractured under hunger. The ship lurched, and spray slapped her face, cold and bitter. Daenerys did not flinch. Missandei's voice came softly. "It will be colder there," she said, almost as if speaking to herself. Daenerys glanced at her friend and saw fear flickering behind Missandei's composure. Not fear of battle. Fear of the North's cold, of the unknown, of being far from any place that felt like home. Daenerys's expression softened slightly. "You don't have to go," she said. Missandei lifted her chin, eyes steady. "If you go," she said, "I go." Grey Worm's gaze flicked to Missandei for a heartbeat, tenderness in a face built for war, then returned north. Daenerys watched them, feeling a pang. Loyalty like that was rare. It was also heavy. It made her choices matter more. A sailor shouted from the rigging, "Land!" and the word rippled through the crew like a pulse. Daenerys stepped forward, eyes narrowing. At first she saw only gray. Then, on the horizon, a faint line appeared, dark and jagged. Cliffs, a coastline, the north's edge, where the world turned into snow and stone. Even from this distance, the air felt different, colder, sharper, as if winter itself was reaching out. Drogon circled overhead, then flew forward, drawn by land like a predator drawn by scent. Daenerys watched him and felt both comfort and unease. Dragons could burn ice. Dragons could burn castles. Dragons could burn kings. She thought of the letter's simple offer, an alliance without submission. She thought of the rumor Qyburn's spies had carried south and back to her across whispers. Valyrian steel crown. Valyrian steel belonged to her bloodline. Yet a wolf wore it now. Daenerys tucked the letter deeper into her cloak and inhaled the cold air until it burned. "Prepare to land," she commanded. Tyrion nodded, gripping the rail, eyes on the distant cliffs. "And prepare to meet a man who doesn't bend," he murmured. Daenerys's eyes hardened. "Everyone bends," she said. Above, Drogon roared, and the sound rolled toward the north like an announcement. The fire began as a whisper, a small lick of flame in the granary's corner, easily missed among the torches and winter gloom. Then the wind found it, and the dry grain found it, and suddenly Winterfell's courtyard filled with smoke and the crackle of burning wood. Men shouted. Horses screamed. Snow fell harder as if the sky had decided to smother the blaze, but the blaze fought back, turning flakes into hissing steam. Jon was in the yard within moments, crown on his head, cloak flaring behind him. He had been in the solar with Davos and Sansa when the alarm came. Not a horn, not yet, but the frantic pounding of boots and the sharp stink of smoke. "Buckets!" Davos bellowed, already running, hauling a barrel toward the well with surprising strength for a man his age. Sansa's voice cut through chaos. "Children to the inner keep," she shouted. "Now! No stopping, move!" Servants scrambled, faces pale, clutching infants and dragging half-awake children wrapped in blankets. Fear made them clumsy. Sansa made them orderly by force of will, shoving a sobbing woman forward, barking commands until panic turned into motion. Jon stared at the burning granary and felt rage spike. Grain was life. Fire was a knife in winter. Sabotage, he thought. Someone had lit this. A scream rose from the far side of the yard, sharper than smoke fear. "The gate!" someone yelled. "The side gate!" Jon turned, and the world seemed to tilt. The small side gate near the stables, used for quick runs, not defended like the main, was shaking. Men were pushing from the inside, trying to bar it, but something on the other side hit it again and again with tireless force. Then the gate burst inward. Bodies spilled through. Not living bodies. Wights, their limbs stiff, their eyes blue as ice fire, their mouths open in silent hunger. They moved faster than they should, drawn by the noise, by the heat, by the smell of fear. Jon's stomach went cold. The dead were inside the walls. "Form up!" Jon shouted, voice ringing. "Spears! Line! Protect the keep!" Men scrambled, terror flashing in their eyes. Some froze. Some ran. Jon's voice cracked like a whip, pulling them back from the edge. The crown's cold pressed into him, and he felt something like clarity settle. Kings were not allowed to panic. Panic was contagious. Archers! Jon roared. Fire arrows. Aim for the heads. Slow them. Don't hit our men. A handful of archers loosed, arrows hissing through snow, striking dead flesh. The wights barely slowed, but the impact knocked some off their feet, buying space. Ghost charged with a snarl, white fur streaked by smoke. He slammed into a wight, jaws closing on its throat, dragging it down. The wight clawed at him with frozen fingers. Ghost tore its flesh anyway, as if refusing to accept that dead things did not bleed properly. A wight lunged toward a fleeing child. Jon's heart clenched. He moved without thinking, longclaw drawn, Valyrian steel singing. He reached the wight in 2 strides and drove the blade through its spine. The corpse collapsed instantly, as if the steel remembered how to kill what should not live. Jon yanked the sword free and turned, breath harsh. More wights surged through the broken gate. And then Arya was there, dropping from a stair, landing like a falling knife, her dark cloak snapping. She landed amidst them with a dragonglass dagger in one hand and needle in the other, moving with terrifying grace. She stabbed obsidian into a wight's eye, then pivoted and drove it into another's throat. Each kill was efficient, almost bored, as if she had been waiting for the world to finally provide an enemy she could hate without guilt. "Jon!" Arya shouted, breath steaming. "They followed the fire." Jon's jaw clenched. "Someone started it," he shouted back, eyes scanning the yard even as he fought. "Find who?" Arya's eyes flashed. "After," she snapped, and plunged back into the dead. Davos dragged a barrel of water through slush, shouting at men to throw snow on the blaze, to keep the granary from taking the whole yard. His face was streaked with soot, eyes red, but he kept moving because stopping meant losing. Sansa, smoke in her hair, grabbed a frightened soldier by the collar and shoved him toward the line. "Stand!" she hissed. "Stand or I'll have you whipped if you live." The soldier blinked at her, stunned by her fury, then raised his spear with shaking hands. Jon fought with a cold focus that frightened him. Longclaw cut through dead flesh, and it mattered more than steel should. The wights he struck with the Valyrian blade stayed down longer, sometimes entirely. Others needed fire or dragonglass. Jon watched his men learn that truth with horror. A wight grabbed a spearman and bit into his neck. The man screamed, then fell, blood steaming in cold air. Another wight stepped over him, already reaching for the next living body. Jon drove Longclaw through its chest and shoved it off, snarling. "Back!" he shouted. "Back to the keep." The line held, barely. Spears jabbed. Torches swung. Fire caught in white hair and turned them into stumbling candles. The smell was horrific, burning flesh and wet wool and smoke. The granary's roof collapsed with a roar, sending sparks into the air like orange snow. For a heartbeat, the firelight flared so bright that Jon could see the courtyard's far corners clearly. And in that flare, he saw movement at the broken side gate. Not a wight, a man. A living man slipping away into shadow, cloak pulled up, moving too carefully for panic. Jon's blood surged. Traitor. He started toward him, but a wight lunged, forcing Jon to parry and kill. When Jon looked back, the man was gone. Sansa's voice cut through the chaos. "Jon!" she shouted. "The inner keep doors now." Jon saw it. The refugees, children, old men, women carrying bundles, were nearly to the inner keep, but wights were pushing toward them, drawn by the cluster of warmth and sound. Jon turned, crown cold, SWO. RD raised. He ran. He reached the refugees as a wight's fingers brushed a child's blanket. Jon swung Longclaw in a wide arc, severing the wight's arm, then drove the blade into its skull. Blue light died. The child screamed and clung to a woman's leg. "Inside!" Jon roared. "Inside!" Guards shoved the keep doors open. People poured in. Sansa stood at the threshold, face streaked, eyes blazing, pulling children through like a woman hauling lives out of a flood. Arya appeared beside Jon, breath ragged. "More coming," she warned, eyes scanning the broken gate. Jon's stomach clenched. "How many?" How close? He heard it then. A sound beyond the walls, beyond the fire, beyond the shouting. A horn. Not Winterfell's. Not human. A low, distant call that rolled through the night like a breath from the grave. Men froze. Even the wights seemed to hesitate for a heartbeat, heads tilting as if listening. Ghost's growl deepened into something almost mournful. Jon looked toward the treeline beyond the walls, smoke and snow obscuring it, and in the darkness he saw faint blue points glimmering. More than before, closer than before. The dead were not only inside his walls. They were surrounding them. Sansa's hand closed on Jon's arm, hard. "This is it?" she whispered, voice fierce and terrified. "This is what you crowned yourself for." Jon felt the crown's cold like a brand. He looked at the burning granary, at the bodies in snow, at the living scrambling to survive, at the blue eyes beyond firelight. He lifted Longclaw, voice ringing through smoke and snow. "Hold the line," he shouted. And Winterfell, battered and burning, answered its king with steel and fear and the stubborn refusal to die quietly.